Licensing and administrative procedures will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Chairman King,
Here.
Vice Chair Wally, Goldman, Harless, Hernandez, Herrero, Tracy King,
Here.
Patterson, Schaefer, Shaheen, Thompson.
We have a quorum. Where's Burns' bill? Chair lays out House Bill 2334. Recognizes Chairman Burns to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 2334. This bill seeks to update outdated and inefficient oversight regulations on utility contractors working on water lines between the public water line and a commercial building or a structure. We're talking about large construction with heavy machinery to install these large diameter pipelines in which they use heavily engineered plans. When installing water, wastewater, and storm drainage lines on public property, utility contractors are not required to be supervised. But when performing this exact same work on private property, a licensed plumber is required to oversee these utility contractors. The delay and cost caused by coordinating and hiring plumbers inefficient and in reality serves no functional purpose. In fact, in a letter from a licensed master plumber that should be in the background documents my office submitted to you all, they wrote, "Most utility contractors are highly trained professionals who are qualified to perform this work without being under direct supervision by a licensed plumber, just as they are currently allowed to do on the public right-of-way." They went on to say that they're very proud of their plumbing license and will continue their career as a plumber for many more years, but could confidently say that nothing in the bill erodes any safeguards or harms the public health and well-being. All the work done by utility contractors is performed following the design and specifications of licensed engineers and is inspected by municipal water department inspectors or their designees. There are also safety concerns for the plumbers doing this work because they may not have trench safety training and are often unsupervised around the large trenches dug out when installing water and wastewater lines. HB 2334 increases efficiency by removing the unnecessary requirement of locating and scheduling a licensed plumber to oversee their work on private property. This bill will not affect current requirements for licensed plumbers working inside any building or structure. This bill will not affect current requirements for licensed plumbers to oversee work done on private property designated for the use of single-family or two-family dwellings. This bill will not erode any protections for project owners who require utility contractors to have insurance and bonds and withhold 10% retainage until the project is complete, and are also protected by a 10-year statute of repose. This bill will not prohibit municipalities from requiring that work done by utility contractors be inspected or prohibit municipalities from requiring permits for such work. I appreciate your time and attention this afternoon. We have some resource witnesses that can answer questions and probably provide you some more information as well. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing this bill.
All right. Anybody got any questions for Chairman Burns? Oh, Ms. T.
Why do we have plumbers now doing this work?
That's a great question. We don't have plumbers doing the work on public rights of way, but it's required on private property. And I think, as we've gotten away from more projects like this being done in public rights of way and moved toward more of these projects are being done on private property, it's become an issue. But I couldn't tell you exactly why it's happening now, which is part of the reason why the bill was filed to remove that requirement.
So we're moving the requirement, but we don't know why we're moving it.
Oh, well, I know why we're removing it. I just don't know why it's in place. The reason why we're removing it is because it's not required on the right-of-way currently. And we just want those same standards on private projects as well. And when you look at what the actual work that's being done, the way it's been explained to me, is the actual work that's being done is being done by these large contractors, heavy machinery, big things, not necessarily, and not plumbing. Now, nothing changes once you get from 5 feet into the building. All of that remains the same. And that's where we need to rely on the expertise of master plumbers, and they need to oversee that. This doesn't change any of that. We're just talking about the heavy machinery part where you got engineered plans, connecting the structure to the utility itself.
Okay, But we're not increasing the cost of the homeowners or anything like landowners.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're gonna reserve your right to close.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair calls Bree Wink. Ms. Wink, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Hi, I'm Bree Wink, and I'm the owner and president of Fireline Services. We're underground utility contractor outside of Fort Worth, and I also am a representative for NUCA, National Utility Contractors Association. And just to piggyback on what Representative Burns was saying, I am for 2334, simply to clean up how, and for the verbiage to match how the work's currently being done. Utility contractors are currently doing this work. This is just an administrative process that we have to have a plumber on hand to pull the permits. As far as anything else, the plumber is not doing it. Is strictly just for administrative work. And so we start, I will say, utility contractors per engineered civil plans. Just to give you an example, we start at the treatment centers for water and sewer and lay hundreds of miles of this pipe through fields, through cities, through streets. And then once we get to that property line, after we've laid hundreds of miles of this in depths of 40 to 30 and 20 feet deep through all of these dangerous areas, once we get to that property line, now for some reason we have to be overseen by a plumber. And it is just to match how we're currently doing it and to clean up what's being done. I do not want to be a plumber, and I don't want to be in their lane. They are wonderful craftsmen at what they do, and I want them to keep doing what they do. And I want our skilled workers to be able to freely and cleanly do what we're skilled and trained to do. Do not want to infringe on their work, and vice versa as well. And you know, some of the just to piggyback on what Representative Burns saying, we stop 5 foot of the building, which is then where the plumbers do start their work. We stop 5 foot of any grease traps. As far as the grease traps concerned, that's on the plumbing plans. That's not on the civil plan. So we have nothing to do with that as well. And the plumbers, one of the comments that they've made, which is a fantastic comment, is they have year-round training. And they do, which is needed for plumbing. And we do as well for our methods and means as well, maybe even more because ours get so deep and can be so dangerous. And so we want them to continue their training, and we would like to continue our training as well. And as far as like inspections and quality control, whenever you're on a job site building a building, like even this building right here, there are hundreds of contractors on that job site. Only 3 have a license: fire, electrical, and plumbing. All the other 100 craftsmen do not fall under a license. They are regulated by OSHA or by the city specs. And that's exactly how we are regulated, and we continue to be regulated on the private side as well. And so we just simply are asking for this verbiage to be cleaned up so that we can make it easier for the owners and easier for the cities and easier for the plumbers to do their craft and for us utility contractors to do our craft. We are already putting in 99% of underground utilities, and it is our realm, it is our expertise.
Thank you, Ms. Wink.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. Members, are questions? Seeing none? Thank you for being
All
here.
right, thank you.
Chair calls Robert Thornton. Mr. Thornton, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on this bill.
Yes, sir, Chairman. My name's Robert Thornton. I'm the business manager for Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local Union 286, located here in the Central Texas area, and I'm here to oppose House Bill 2334. I'm a master plumber, have been for over 20 years. Installed systems inside a building, outside a building. I was a plumbing inspector for the city of Austin for 9 years. And, you know, the question was asked, what is the difference? The difference is that property line. Everything in that right of way is maintained by a city or a municipality. Once you get inside the property line, then it's up to that landowner or that owners of the building, that property, to maintain those systems. So even though, pipe is pipe, I'm not gonna argue that, but the plumbing code requirements for private property installations do differ from installations in the right of way. All our adopted building codes and they regulate, health and safety of our citizens, but they also provide for durable installation that protects the property owner by having an installation that will last and hold up over time. So therefore, we need to maintain the requirement that a plumber's involved once we get inside that property line. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, there questions? Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the previous speaker said that this bill is a cleanup bill, and what you all are doing now is just an administrative thing. You just help them pull a permit.
And we've got a couple of representatives here from the State Board of Plumbing Examiners. My understanding, once you get inside that property line and it's a plumbing installation and the plumbing code adopted for that area is applicable to it, not only it's administrative for that master plumber, that responsible master plumber, but the installers at a minimum are required to be registered apprentices, which I think is $15, and a plumber on site are available for general supervision, because you do have, that installation is different. I looked at, like I said, that was my livelihood for 9 years, looking at installations inside a building and outside a building as a plumbing inspector. And it's different once you get inside that property line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions? No. Not seeing any. Thank you for being here. Chair calls Joshua Holub. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for your leadership and service. My name is Joshua Holub. I'm here on behalf of Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of Texas, and I'm here in opposition of House Bill 2334. This bill, although at face value seems cut and dry, is far more complicated than described and presented. But I want to make a comment on the most important item and make myself available for any questions of follow-up. When we say utilities, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, potable water, and natural gas are the four services commonly described as utilities. Natural gas inherently comes with a high level of risk associated with its installation. The third largest disaster in Texas history involves a school in New London, Texas, where 300 students and staff were killed in an explosion due to inadequate and undertrained installers. Sanitary sewer is also a very high-risk installation from a health standpoint as well as an environmental standpoint. If our goal as industry leaders, public servants, neighbors, and parents is public safety, then House Bill 2334 is a direct implementation of a public health hazard to the safety of our citizens. But to be clear, I don't stand against the fine contractors that do this work, but being held to the technical and safety standards, the insurance requirements, and showing proof of coverage, and the important certifications and proof of understanding required through TCEQ and the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners should be fully required as a minimum standard to ensure the installations are safe, long-lasting, and does not make way for profits to become more important than the health and safety of our fellow Texans. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, questions for the witness? See none. Appreciate you being here. All right. Chair calls Rick Lord. Mr. Lord, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rick Lord. I live at 6906 Redwood Falls in Pasadena, and I oppose this piece of legislation as it's written. Some of this piece of legislation...
Mr.
Yes,
Lord?
sir.
Okay, the record, what we have is that you're representing Plumbers Local 68 and self.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just
Sorry
make sure we
about
have it correct.
I oppose this because of the definitions that were put into this bill. You know, if it's just the service lines or the mains, then we wouldn't need the apprentices and the equipment. that expanded what the utility installer would do. I mean, there's several things that you have to be a licensed plumber to do those installations. And at this time with the language, if it's just to address the utilities, then we ought to address the utilities. But when they added that those other definitions, that expanded their scope. And those go into things like backflow preventers, the fire protection systems, backflow preventers, and other things that the plumber has to be the one to install. So, with that, at this time, we oppose the piece of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Lord, for the testimony. Members, are there questions of the witness? Not seeing any. Thank you again for being here. Chair calls Stephen Cox. Mr. Cox, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Stephen Cox. Represent myself here as a RMP in Austin, Texas. First of all, I want to say we've opened Pandora's box here. I'm a RMP, a utility contractor. I own a fire license, installer's license, and I also do development work. And I work on both sides of this fence, and the fence being the property lines of the state of Texas and the way they're defined and how we work through a development process, and when these lines are installed in an easement, and when these lines cross out of that easement and they enter onto the private property side. When you're in the easement, those lines are usually bonded. They're represented by the municipality that's in charge of them. They're overseeing them 24/7. They're maintaining them, and the engineer is writing a concurrence letter to ensure they're done. And the taxpayer is taking the burden to maintain those when they're done. When we cross over to the property line, this bill is asking that we just throw all that out, that we don't have any licensing, we don't have any requirements, we don't have any bonding. We let them work on grease traps, we let them work on backflow preventers, as the gentleman said before. And that puts the burden on the homeowner, the developer. I know they excluded 1 and 2, but the developer being me, myself, who goes in and we put these utilities around this perimeter and we get it accepted in the plat, and then we may break it down again and then put another set of utilities around that and stub them to the property, and we may sell this piece of property off to another entity. They're just happening. Sometimes we do it simultaneously. We go through the development process, we work through it, we plat it, and we permit at the same time. When we start in the street, we extend those utilities, and they do go right on into the building property lines as an extension of those services. And what happens is, when you don't have the proper people trained, you're now getting these apparatuses that they're talking about of reclaim systems, fire line systems, condensation relocation systems. I mean, we've got a multitude of underground systems, gas lines, dry utilities. And I just think this is just a bad bill right now. I think it could be worked on, and there could be some things that may be worked out through some type of licensing arrangement, but bad for me as the owner and bad for me as a contractor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, questions for the witness? Not seeing any. Appreciate your testimony. Is that it? Technical difficulties.
Call Jacob Smith.
Who?
Jacob Smith. He
Okay.
doesn't want to testify, so he's just going to wave his hand to show.
Okay. Chair calls Jacob Smith.
Yeah, he doesn't want to testify.
We're going to show Jacob Smith as against the bill, but not testifying. Okay. We did that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Chair calls Chase Barker. Mr. Barker, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Yes. Chase Barker, can y'all hear me? Chase Barker, I'm with the National Utility Contractor Association. We represent over 200 utility contractors in the state of Texas. I'm the legislative chair, and I'm for the bill, HB 2334. I've combed over this language. It seems like it was broad language from years ago, kind of getting more into the utility contractor realm. I think it's interesting that there's a private versus public designation because the work we continue to do stays underground on the site. So it's strange that we're getting into something that's related to testing and quality based on a private versus public designation line. The bill does not apply to natural gas. Our utility contractors install backflow preventers all the time. We operate with the highest quality standards, highest safety standards. We have mandrel testing, vacuum testing, pressure testing. It all has to pass before we can move on with the work we're doing. From a safety standpoint, we're regulated by OSHA. There's specific trench safety standards that we must follow, 29 CFR 1926. We're dealing with big equipment. We're digging way down into the ground, and this is much more in our expertise from a safety and a quality standard. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. We ask for the passage of 2334.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions of the witness? Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. That's it? Okay. Well, all right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2334? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Chairman Burns to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Just to talk about a couple points. Again, we're not talking about grease traps. They may be outside the 5 foot, but grease traps are outside the scope of what utility contractors work and wouldn't be on their plans. It's something plumbers do and will continue to do. When it comes to the safety and inspection, again, as you've heard, OSHA, they have to follow OSHA guidelines, federal trench regulations. All the work done by these contractors is covered by a 10-year statute of repose. They are required to have insurance. It follows design to plans, and they're still subject to any inspection process through the city or code enforcement or whatever that they would have been otherwise before this bill. So with that, try to answer any questions if you have any, but I appreciate your time.
Questions, members? Not seeing any. We're all good?
All right, thank you.
If there's no objection, House Bill 2334 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 2334 is left pending.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Where's this? Okay. All right. Chair lays out House Bill 2689. Recognize Representative Cecil Bell to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 2689. Currently, the state of Texas operates under 2 separate plumbing codes, the International Plumbing Code, the IPC, and the Uniform Plumbing Code, the UPC. The International Plumbing Code is designed as part of a family of codes developed by the International Code Council. Each of these codes are designed to work in concert with each other and contain numerous references. The Uniform Plumbing Code is a standalone code developed by the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials. Current statute results in conflicting plumbing codes, creating unneeded complexity, inefficiency, and potential confusion for builders and regulators. In addition to the State Board of Plumbing Examiners, the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners is required to incorporate 2 different codes with different provisions into a single exam, causing challenges for potential licensees. This discourse is unwarranted, especially when the majority of Texas uses the International Plumbing Code, which correlates, again, with the other building codes implemented in Texas. House Bill 2689 addresses this issue by designating the International Plumbing Code as the sole plumbing code for Texas. Additionally, it will give the Texas State Plumbers Board the flexibility to update to newer editions as they see fit and as they are released. The IPC is designed to protect public health and safety through provisions that do not unnecessarily increase construction costs or restrict the use of new materials, products, or methods of construction. Additionally, no preferential treatment is specified or methods of construction, making the IPC more economically advantageous and beneficial potentially than the alternate Uniform Plumbing Code. Adopting one plumbing code in Texas through HB 2689 makes good safety sense, eliminates confusion and inconsistency in code enforcement amongst the differing jurisdictions across the state, and is cost effective. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We have some expert witnesses, and if not, I'll reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Representative Bell. You're going to get to do that. Mr. Schaefer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. And maybe one of your witnesses would be better to answer this, but who determines what goes into the International Plumbing Code?
So I'll let them answer that, but basically, there's a consortium that puts together the information, but I'll let the subject matter expert answer that.
Other questions? Okay, we'll call you back in a minute. You got about 4 witnesses, it looks like. Let the record reflect that Vice Chair Wally is with us. Chair calls John Mata. John Mata. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
No, he didn't hear the A.
John Mata, International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, against HB 2689. Good afternoon, Chairman King and members of the committee. I'm John Mata, a lifelong Texan and licensed journeyman plumber, and the Senior Director of Field Service for IAPMO. I'm here today to testify against HB 2689. IAPMO's flagship document, the Uniform Plumbing Code, is adopted in some of the largest jurisdictions in Texas. Approximately 20% of the state's population live in areas which have adopted the Uniform Plumbing Code. For many years, the state of Texas has recognized in statute a municipality's ability to choose between the 2 model plumbing codes. This bill would take away that right, removing the local choice. Passing legislation would impose an unfunded mandate on municipalities across the state. The fallout from such an action would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in rewriting codes, purchasing new materials, and retraining code inspection departments. This is a burden cities and industries should not bear. In fact, the state plumbing board testing curriculum is based on both model plumbing codes, as was said earlier. That means 70,000 plus license holders in the state are free to move across county lines and be authorized to work in all jurisdictions, regardless of the local adopted plumbing code. Furthermore, the state enjoys plumbing license reciprocity with surrounding states, that thereby further removing workforce barriers. Plumbers using the Uniform Plumbing Code because of its user-friendly turnkey philosophy, meaning the one book for all installations, as opposed to the other model code body that requires up to 6 books at almost 5 times the cost. This increases code book sales and discourages competitions. IAPMO's turnkey philosophy also means there are fewer areas of interpretation which help eliminate conflict between contractors and inspections, which is costly. Additionally, the Uniform Plumbing Code incorporates the latest advancements in science and technology, which they have developed the peak water demand calculator, one of the most significant updates to the plumbing code sizing since the 1940s, and provisions for Legionella. No other plumbing code include these innovations and associated cost savings. I want you to understand Uniform Plumbing Code correlates seamlessly with all other building codes, just like the National Electrical Code, which is not part of the ICC family of codes. This is what makes IAPMO's code most a resilient option. It is for these reasons I respectfully request the committee vote against House Bill 2689 in the best interest of the state and the plumbing professions. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there questions of the witness? Oh, Tracy, Representative.
Thank you. And if there's somebody else that's here that can answer this better, then you just tell me, and we'll wait till they get up here. But I expect you can answer it. But so this is a biennial issue. Remind me of the ownership or the basis of UPC and IPC. I mean, one of them is a private organization, I think, if I remember, and one of them is
they're both membership-based organizations, or member-based driven, but it's the development of the codes. We utilize the ANSI accredited open consensus process, meaning anybody from the plumber, the apprentice, the manufacturer, everybody has a say-so and a voice and vote in our code. Unlike the government consensus process at the tail end, unless you're a government official, it's the only one that has a say-so in the vote, and that may or may not be a licensed plumber. And that's really the development, between the two. If that's, I'm assuming I'm understanding your question correctly.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, thank you.
Members, other questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair calls Rick Lord. Mr. Lord, once again, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Yes, sir. My name is Rick Lord. I represent the Plumbers Local 68 and myself, and I oppose House Bill 2689. On this bill, the issue is the plumbing industry has been in front of the legislature the last few times, and the industry had met, both union, non-union, everybody said, hey, we're going to give y'all a break. We've had enough, and I'm sure y'all have seen us enough, and we felt like we shouldn't be coming up here. And in fact, we even had a meeting with the international people in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they told us that they would work with us on these kind of issues. And this is not a union issue. This is all the industry that participate in the plumbing industry. And we all came up to an agreement saying, we're not going to bring any legislation. So this piece of legislation here was not asked by the industry. Anybody that turns a tool did not ask for this, did not want this. And we really hate to be in this position to even testify. And this bill comes up almost every session. Every session it gets beaten. So, we just hope y'all look at it and look at the industry, because the mass majority of plumbers use the uniform set of codes. I mean, the larger cities. So, when we talk about plumbers, it is going to be an extremely large amount of money that the industry is going to have to pay to retrain people. And one of the things that me as a plumber or an ex-board member from the plumbing board, I like the uniform code because it told you to go from point A to point B. It didn't have variations. And when you're training someone or testing someone, you want to know specifics. You don't want to ask them a question and have 3 different answers. So with that being said, we like to have the specifics of the uniform code as an installer.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. I believe we have a question. Mr. Schaefer.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. So right now, the state law requires the uniform plumbing code.
No, both of them.
But allows both of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But most people are trained under the uniform because it's specific.
Okay, so who determines what's in the uniform plumbing code?
The uniform code, that's made up of plumbers, industry people, manufacturers. So not one group oversees the whole thing.
Is it an American?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the international organization that this bill would do, the International Plumbing Code, I'm trying to read on here. It's got a headquarters in Washington, D.C. I don't see any offices in the state of Texas. And so if we put that in law that we have to follow the international code, we're binding Texas to what's happening in Washington?
By government officials. It's solely by government officials.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, anything else for Mr. Lord? I've got one.
Yes.
It seems like this was a significant argument a couple sessions ago when plumbers were in Sunset. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what was the result of that argument? I mean, nothing ever happened.
No, sir.
We just left it the way it was.
Yes, sir.
During the Sunset process.
Yep.
That's the way I remembered it, but I just wanted to, is there any more background on that, on why the industry came together and said, let's just leave it alone?
Most of the industry supports the uniform set of codes. The people that do the work, the actual work, support the uniform set of codes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Lord, I appreciate you being here.
Thank
Members, other questions?
Thank you.
See you none. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a stab at this. Chair calls Jeffrey Tawawa.
Mr. Chairman, he's on his way in right now.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to move or wait? Is this him? Okay. We'll move Mr. Tawawa to the, are you here? Okay. Please state your name and who you represent and your position on the bill for the record.
I just did the fastest mad dash from the visitor's garage, I think, on record. So, again, my name is Jeffrey Tawawa, and I'm here on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Texas. I'm just grabbing my testimony. We represent 1,600 members across the state, which includes all specialties within the Texas construction industry, including the industrial and commercial sectors. Members of ABC construct high-rise buildings, schools, offices, highways, industrial facilities for both public and private entities. Excuse me. By adopting 2689, the state of Texas will be eliminating the decades-long confusion over which plumbing code to use, while also ensuring the continued health and safety of all Texans. While functionally, HB 2689 changes the code that the test is based on.
Mr. Tawawa?
Yes.
Just for the record, I don't think we were clear on your position on the bill.
Sure, we are for the bill, sorry.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still in the marathon mode.
I understand.
And it serves as a signal to municipalities as to which code to consider for the adoption. This is critical since 97.4% of Texas cities utilize the International Plumbing Code. And if you expand that to the whole family of codes, every Texas city over 500 is utilizing some form of the International Code for a component of their technical building codes. By having the dueling codes, this has caused frequent confusion for our members as we bid on projects. It's not uncommon for our members to move construction teams all over the state. And when our members are bidding in Austin, Houston, Alpine, or Cibolo, or one of the other 16 cities that utilize the uniform code, they must redo their labor and materials costs because the uniform code requires more and larger pipe. Additionally, as we work with our architectural partners in the uniform code jurisdictions, we must re-examine building plans to address the need for more venting because of the lack of flexibility with the uniform code. This is why it's especially challenging for our national customers who usually have dozens of floor plans or designs that they recycle in multiple markets. It's also a challenge when we try to do things like solar panels or on-site reuse. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions. I have a little bit more of my testimony, but I have it written and I'll submit that to the clerk.
Representative Harless has a question.
Thank you, Chairman. If this bill passes, we're not changing the quality at all of the plumbing work being done, are we?
No, absolutely not. You know, both codes are a international standard for safety. And as I mentioned, all Texas cities over 500 are using some form of the international family of codes already. What this bill does is it just saying for the sake of plumbing, we're only using the international code, whereas right now, the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners has to test to both. And so it's not changing anything. In fact, the uniform code people will still be able to plumb the same way because they're, the manner in which they install plumbing still meets the international code standards. So they don't even have to learn anything new necessarily.
And it would also make it easier to bid jobs, wouldn't it? Because you have one code you're bidding to.
Correct. Yeah. So if I'm hypothetically someone based out of Katy, Texas, I don't have to necessarily change how I'm doing my bids just because I'm going into Houston, where at the moment the code changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Members, other questions for the witness? Seeing none, appreciate you being here.
No problem.
Chair Carls, Mark Roberts. Mr. Roberts, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. I'm Mark Roberts. I'm the Senior Regional Manager of Government Relations for the International Code Council. I'm speaking in full support of HB 2689 today. To answer a question that was asked earlier, the International Code Council is an American not-for-profit organization that develops model codes and standards. The Code Council has more than 60,000 members in about 380 state and local chapters throughout the United States, with 18 chapters here in Texas and 4,200 members here in Texas. ICC's membership includes building officials, inspectors, plan reviewers, as well as representatives from trade organizations representing plumbers, home builders, contractors, product manufacturers, and suppliers. ICC develops 15 different codes known as the I-codes, which are adopted in every state. Not every code, but at least one code is adopted in every state of the United States. The I-codes include the International Plumbing Code and the International Residential Code, and they are the most widely adopted and set of building codes in the United States. Decades of knowledge and experience guide ICC's code development process to create safe and sustainable, affordable communities and a level playing field for builders, developers, and manufacturers. Currently, Texas cities may operate under either the IPC or the UPC. Research shows that 97% of Texas communities use the International Plumbing Code. This means the I-codes protect more than 15 million Texans every day. The majority of Texas cities adopt the International Plumbing Code for its cost effectiveness, its correlation with the other building codes, flexibility, ease of adoption, and consistency with other cities. Our research also finds that there are 595 Texas jurisdictions using the International Plumbing Code, protecting over 17 million, while the UPC has 16 jurisdictions, covering a population just over 3.5 million. The International Plumbing Code focuses on protecting health and safety through technology that do not increase construction costs, restrict the use of new materials, products, or methods of construction. Most Texas plumbers, builders, contractors, developers, and manufacturers work in more than one city, sometimes more than one city in a single day. Conflicting codes are not logical or efficient. There is value in predictability and consistency in technical codes among cities using ICC's family of codes. It provides predictability and consistency. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I think Mr. Schaefer has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So where do you office?
So I personally office in Louisiana. We have a representative here that offices in San Antonio.
Okay. What is the International Code Council's role in the climate change effort?
So we do produce a green construction code. I'm assuming that's what you're asking about specific. Is there a more specific?
Well, I mean, I'm reading on your website, you've got an executive summary about creating a committee that's equitable and diverse, representing racial, gender, and socioeconomic diversity, and then setting out solutions that deal with electrical vehicle charging, electrification and decarbonization, zero energy and zero carbon, embodied carbon, grid interactivity, efficiency, performance standards for existing buildings, and on and on and on. It seems like your organization is moving to changing its code in order to, buy into the climate change effort.
So we address many different codes. We address building codes, fire codes, plumbing, mechanical, fuel, gas, property maintenance codes. I mean, it's all of which are adopted in the state of Texas right now. This committee or task force that you're talking about is just a committee or task force, just that. It's doing investigative work about what ICC will do in the future, addressing these issues that are, being forced or is out in the world now.
Okay, so my concern is if this committee comes up with a ESG policy that we've got to change the International Plumbing Code because we're going to go to zero carbon I'm just reading from your committee's objective here, zero carbon. What's that going to do to the oil and gas industry and things in the state of Texas if you change your code and we now have it in state law that we have to comply with that?
So the International Plumbing Code would not say that you're going to have zero carbon. In the event that there is zero carbon requirements given by government, the codes would be able to address that.
But which government?
Exactly. So we're model.
Oh, that's what we're asking.
But we're model codes, and so is IATMO for that.
Right. But
we're model codes.
But the point of this bill is that whatever you put in your model code becomes state law.
If I could correct that, that's not exactly correct. So state and local governments, it is a true model code. So state and local governments adopt our codes and they amend it any way they seem fit. Any way they seem fit. That's the way the codes are designed. Same with IATMO's codes. State and local government can amend codes.
But if I'm reading the bill. The bill is basically to say the state of Texas is going with the ICC model. Correct?
Okay.
Is that, I mean, am I wrong in that that's the intent of the bill?
It is created, right now, we're using the International Plumbing Code and the Uniform Plumbing
Right.
Code. It's to limit it to one code
That's
versus
right.
two.
And we now have an organization who's headquartered in Washington DC, who has a task force that's involved in ESG policies. How can we be assured as state legislators that you're not going to adopt something that we, that conflicts with our policy in the state of Texas?
I can tell you that, Texas has quite a few members that are involved in our code development process. Like I said before, it's like 4,200 members here in Texas. The governmental members that are involved have a vote in everything that we do.
Okay.
Our code development process is open process. You can view it from anywhere you have a computer. Anyone can submit a code change proposal.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Let the record reflect that Representative Patterson has joined us. Vice Chair Wally has a question.
Just a point of clarification. So do you only, ICC only deals with the plumbing industry? So do y'all answer that question first?
No, we don't just deal with the plumbing industry. Okay. We actually deal with all industries that are in the construction, in the built environment.
Okay. But here you're...
So we certainly use architects, we use engineers, whether they're mechanical engineers, fire protection engineers, whatever it might be.
No, I guess my question for this code itself.
Right.
This is about the plumbing code.
Correct.
Do you also, and you said, I'm assuming there's a curriculum, you sell books.
We do.
You do all that kind of stuff?
Correct.
Okay, but do you also have, an electrical component of the ICC as well, or how?
So to make a correction from earlier testimony, it was stated that the National Electrical Code is not part of the family of codes. So the National Electrical Code is created by NFPA. And actually, they are part of the International Family of Codes as far as the electrical code goes. We include their document in our International Residential Code. It is part of the code. So we don't create it, NFPA creates it, and it is part of the code.
I guess, so you're, this code, let me clarify. So this code on plumbing, does it have an equivalent on the electrical side?
So yeah, but it's not ours.
It's not yours.
It's not ours. It belongs to the National Electrical Code, to NFPA.
Okay.
But we have a mechanical code, a plumbing code, a fuel gas code, building code, residential building code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Roberts, I'll ask you the same question I asked the previous witness. When this was kind of a hot topic a couple years ago during Sunset, why wasn't this resolved then?
I got to tell you, I was not here when that was going on, but I think it had direct to do with the fact that Sunset was going on. I think that it was, that it wasn't full energy put into it because of the Sunset issue that was going on.
It is, as I recall, and I was on this committee that session, and it seemed like there was two factions of plumbers. Some use this code, some use this, and nobody could ever get it together, so we left it. That's the way I remember that going down, and I'm sure somebody will correct me. I was just curious from your standpoint and your the organization standpoint why this wasn't taken care of.
Can I clarify that about the two groups of plumbers a little bit? So both codes are used in the state. Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners actually test for both codes. They have to go through a huge effort to include both codes in their testing and do it balanced so that they don't conflict with each other. If a plumber is using the Uniform Plumbing Code today, and he goes to plumb for the International Code, he can still use those same practices that he's using now. It's just that the International Plumbing Code gives you more opportunity, other pathways for compliance.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that clarification. Other questions, members? Seeing none. Thank you for your
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2689? Hearing none, Chair recognizes Representative Bell to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I think just to touch on a few of the items that were talked about, it was mentioned that there were no contractors here or subcontractors here. ABC is an organization made up of subcontract trades, which include plumbers, and there's been a tremendous amount of dialogue within that conversation. My understanding of changing to Chairman Harless's point earlier, if we change, it adds more flexibility in design and material selections for developers, cities, and others. Doesn't take less. You don't have to be retrained, as has been pointed out 2 or 3 times, and you're not forced, if you want to stay with the technical aspects of what the uniform plumbing is. If you're a plumber and you want to stay with that, and that's what the design shows, you don't have to be retrained. You already know how that works. But a project can be designed under the IPC, which you're also qualified to plumb under in either case. The other aspect, as we heard, was that there are currently 2 codes which the Plumbing Board has to merge into a common test. So it creates challenges there because you're asking, you have similar but not exact codes, and you've got to figure out how to test to make sure that you cover the distinctions between the 2 codes. I think it would certainly clear up and clean up that side of things. And as was mentioned earlier, from a contracting perspective, the ability to be able to go to all of our cities and other jurisdictions and know that the material package that you received for one project meets standard for the next project. You don't have to constantly be concerned that you may have bid a project that inadvertently was in a jurisdiction you were not aware of at the time of the bid. The other question that was mentioned earlier by one of the witnesses was that, and I think the phrase that was used were 3 different questions being asked. Well, and the code, well, this bill would clear that up. So you would not be asked 3 different questions. You'd be asked the same question one way. And again, you'd still be able to plumb. If you're a plumber and you're licensed in the state of Texas, changing to this code will not change your capability, your technical capability, your ability to do the things that your license affords you the ability to do. With that, I respectfully ask this bill be reported favorably, and I thank you for your time.
Thank
Chairman
you.
and
Members, are there any questions? Representative Bell? Seeing none. Thank you for being here. If there's no objection, House Bill 2689 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 2689 is left pending. Okay. Chair lays out House Bill 1759 and recognizes Representative Busey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 1759. House Bill 1759 would allow the sports teams foundations to conduct 50-50 raffles via interactive media platforms, including a website or a mobile app provided by the team, as long as an individual is physically in Texas at the time of the transaction. Professional sports team foundations and charities are some of the most philanthropic and giving arms within the state. For decades, they have provided millions of dollars annually supporting schools, cities, parks and recreation, nonprofits, and military causes. Their impact on their communities can be seen in construction of youth ballparks and fields, renovations of community centers, food distributions, scholarship programs, and services provided directly to nonprofits or schools. 50-50 raffles were created in 2015 with close to universal support in the Texas House and Senate and with 70% of Texas voters in favor. Since then, every major professional sports franchise in Texas has raised millions of dollars through their foundations for charities. By allowing an online purchase option for the 50-50 raffles, these team charity foundations could recoup losses from diminished capacity and reduce donations stemming from the pandemic and even raise more funds to help Texans. I want to thank you for hearing this bill. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'd love to request my right to close.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the author? All right. We reserve you the right to close. Chair calls Karen Morris. We have you signed up as the Executive Director, TRBF, Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation, in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. As the representative said, Since the 50/50 raffles were approved in 2015, more than $20 million has been given back to Texans in our communities. We support anything from youth sports, education, nonprofit organizations like Buckner International, Mission Arlington, Make-A-Wish, you name it, and additionally provide funds and resources for those who serve our state as first responders, members of the military, and their families. We're able to harness the power of our platform and our fans and direct raffle proceeds directly back into the community when our state faces its tragedies or disasters, from floods to hurricanes to fires or winter storms. As a reminder, not a single dollar of those funds raised at those raffles ever touch the books of the professional sports team or the professional sports team owners. All of us are incredible stewards of our foundations, and those dollars go directly into our community. I'm here today seeking nothing more than the state's approval to give back even more to the community by using technology we all use every day to pay our bills, to book our flights. We use our telephones and the internet to do everything. Why not use it to support Texans? This impact will be significant. After speaking with our peers at other Major League Baseball club charities across the country, we know that this change has resulted in an increase of 100 to 200% in their fundraising abilities. What that translates to in Arlington, Texas at Globe Life Field, that means $1 to $2 million more goes into Texas to support Texans through our charities and through our charity givebacks. All of us are seeking your approval for this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to the functionality of the program.
Thank you. Any questions? We appreciate you coming today. Chair calls Caitlin Morrow. We have you signed up the Executive Director of the 4ATX Foundation, Austin FC, for the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Proceed with your testimony, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am a proud lifelong Texan, and as you just said, I'm the Executive Director of Austin FC's nonprofit arm, 4ATX Foundation. 4 years ago, 4ATX Foundation was founded with the vision of becoming a force for good in the Central Texas community. Since then, we have worked tirelessly to deliver against that promise, establishing new programs and partnerships in support of our mission to use the power of soccer to help Central Texas communities thrive. Last year, 4ATX served nearly 320,000 Central Texans across 77 zip codes, delivering over 23,000 hours of quality programming. As a newer professional sports foundation, we have been able to grow quickly thanks to our growing community of supporters. One of the best ways we mobilize Texans in support of our work is through our 50/50 charitable raffle, which we launched at the beginning of last year. In its first year, our raffle generated over $70,000 in revenue, helping us to launch 6 new initiatives, including a 10-month intensive leadership program for soccer-loving low-income high school students. 82% of the youth that we serve are considered at risk of dropping out of high school, and yet 90% of our students are more likely to try harder in school because of our programs. As impactful as we have been, there is much work to be done. If raising $70,000 and engaging only about 12,000 supporters per match through in-person 50/50 raffle sales means we can serve 320,000 Central Texans, imagine how many lives we can change if people can support our work from the convenience of their cell phones. Those impact numbers would increase exponentially. By permitting professional sports teams foundations to accept online 50/50 raffle ticket sales, you will enable foundations like ours to invest millions of more dollars back into the community, transforming the lives of hundreds of thousands more people and creating a more accessible, healthy, and unified Texas community, a vision we can all get behind. Thank you, committee members, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
Chair calls Rob Kohler. Rob Kohler, are you still here? 3 times Rob Kohler. All right, Rob Kohler is representing the Christian Life Commission of the Baptist General Convention of Texas, and he signed up against the bill. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 1759? If not, Chair recognizes Representative Boosie to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 1759 would allow the Sports Teams Foundation to conduct 50/50 raffles via team websites or mobile apps, so long as the individual is physically within the state at the time of the transaction. Again, I want to thank you for hearing this bill, and I close.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there are no objections, the House Bill 1759 will be left pending at this time. Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Okay, we're going to stand at ease for a few minutes here. Wait on the chairman, see what we're going to hear next.
Administrative procedure will come to order. Chair lays out House Bill 3478. Chair offers up committee substitute to House Bill 3478 and recognizes Chairman Tracy King to explain the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, for the opportunity to present House Bill 3478 to you. So today, if a motor carrier believes they have been overcharged for an incident management tow with towing and recovery charges exceeding $20,000, their only recourse is to file a civil action. So a motor carrier is being a trucking company. This bill, HB 3478, allows for a motor carrier to request mediation in a fee dispute with a towing company and would require the towing company to participate in that mediation. This provision creates a more convenient avenue for motor carriers to pursue mediation without first having to pursue civil action. And I'll be glad to answer any questions and reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members and questions? Seeing none, we'll give you that right. We've got a few witnesses. Chair calls Dana Moore. Going once. Dana Moore. Okay, we're going to show Dana Moore as testifying or as not testifying, but registering for the bill. Chair calls Jeanette Rash. Ms. Rash, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on this bill.
My name is Jeanette Rash, and I represent Texas Towing and Storage Association. I'm co-chair of Government Affairs, and I'm for the bill. The reason I'm testifying today is I'm part of the TIM team for Houston TransStar, Texas Incident Management Team, and we review 18-wheeler recoveries on a regular basis. Towing companies, recovery companies, are very, very important. They need to clear traffic, and it is expensive. They have to be 24/7, and they have to have a lot of equipment available and know what they're doing because it is the riskiest part of towing. 100% support them, and those fees are not regulated. There is a tow hearing up to a fee that is up to $20,000. That's why this mediation would be for bills over $20,000. The motor carrier is at a loss. there may be three people involved, the tractor owner, the trailer owner, and the cargo personal property owner. They don't have a right to bargain for exchange at the scene. So a lot of times they may not even know that they've had this lost load. You never know what the lost load is going to be. Therefore, it puts the tower in a must get it done situation because of the circumstances. I fully support that the rates are not regulated at this point in time. I also fully support the motor carrier's need to be charged in a fair and equitable service. That's why we thought this mediation would be the way for them to get together to show that the services were what they needed to be in the cost. And that is the main reason that I am for the bill, understanding the importance of heavy-duty recovering and understanding motor carriers and what they bring to the table for our community. Thank you very much.
Members, questions for Ms. Rash? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Chair calls Lou Ann Wagner. Ms. Wagner, please, for the record, state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Yes. My name is Lou Ann Wagner. I represent Texas Towing and Storage Association. I am a business owner. I own a trucking company, and I also own a towing company. So I kind of sit on both sides of this issue. I am in support of House Bill 3478. The intention of this bill is to, and being in both of these industries, sometimes it's a contentious relationship between trucking companies and towing companies. And that relationship over time, we've seen it bubble to a point that we feel like that we need to have some sort of remedy. There is a current remedy of $0 to $20,000. You can request a tow hearing for that. These are non-consent tows that we are talking about, and they're fee disputes between motor carriers and towing companies. As a motor carrier, if I could just walk through this bill, please. As a motor carrier, they would be required to send a notification when there is a fee dispute to the tower or the VSF within 30 days. That would stop the process of disposing of the vehicle. Storage would continue. So as a towing company, I can still charge storage. TDLR regulates us currently. They would be the ones to issue this order to mediate to the towing company or the VSF operator. The mediators that we're proposing that are chosen would be impartial third-party mediators, and this would be ascertained by Section 154, the Civil Practices and Remedies Code. The parties by agreement would select the venue and the location. The mediation would have to be completed in 30 days, so we feel like it's a very quick process. There is a cost to the mediation. $750 for a half day, $1,500 for a full day. I think you're probably going to hear from my counterparts today that the cost is exorbitant, but I'm here to tell you that a lot of times these disputes are in the range of $100,000. And as a non-consent tow, from a motor carrier perspective, there's no regulation on those rates. They're non-consent tows, and whatever that tower is charging, that's what they're required to pay. So I think $750 to $1,500 is a reasonable amount we don't want to go to a civil suit. And I feel like that in my industry, the majority of towers in our industry are good people providing a good service that we need in the state of Texas. We have traffic issues. We're clearing the highways. We're providing a service that is necessary. We do, and I acknowledge we have some bad actors, but we want to be able to regulate ourselves. We don't want to get to a point where you have people up here talking about regulation for the towing industry. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. So I support House Bill 3478. I don't think there's anything for legitimate operators. I don't think there's anything that's going to hurt our industry. A motor carrier who, if it doesn't get resolved, they can still file a civil suit. From the tower's perspective, it's non-binding. It just creates a process for us to come together and talk about fees that are disputed. We feel like it's a middle ground.
Thank you
And
for
I'll
your
answer any
testimony.
questions that you have.
Members, any questions for Ms. Wagner? Seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Chair calls Todd Johnston. Mr. Johnston, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. My name is Todd Johnston. I'm with Texas Towing and Storage Association. I'm supporting the bill. I have reviewed hundreds of bills around the country in the state of Texas for other associations. I support this bill. I think it'll add another avenue for the two sides to come together.
Okay? That's it.
Thank you.
Very good. I liked your testimony, by the way. That's how you do it. Questions, members? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnston. Chair calls Jason Ward. Mr. Ward, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Jason Ward, Collin County VSF. I'm against the bill. It comes to start with the fact that the insurance industry is already taking our bills from the get-go and already reducing them and offering us pennies on the dollar. So we're already having a mediation as private with them. So we're taking a color, we have a job to do. We're doing it under municipalities, under the color of law, and then we have to then negotiate our price after our price has already been set. So if anything over $20,000, they're going to offer us $2,500, $3,000 because we have to have $300,000 to $1 million of insurance on our trucks. They only have to have $2,500. So they should have more insurance to cover their stuff. That's where the problem is. It's not with $2,500 to have a recovery of 1,000 bottles on the ground that we have to now pick up and do it, and then we have to negotiate for our own money, which time is money. We all know that. So if you guys had to now pay us for this, would you sign this bill that you now have mediation to collect this money? That's what we have to say. We're small businessmen, 30, 60, 90. This can drag out forever. But they're not paying us what should be getting paid right now. We have to fight and negotiate for our money now. Now, this is just going to hurt us more because now it gives them a legal right to go to mediation, which is going to cost us more. So a small businessman has now have to spend $750 to get his money that he should be getting already. They hit us low right from the get-go. Something we're doing because law enforcement told us to do. So I'm really against this because this is putting one more limitation on us to get our money.
Okay. All right. Members, questions for Mr. Ward? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony. Chair calls Mark Denison. Mark Denson? Okay, we're going to show Mark Denson as against the bill, not testifying. Chair calls Brian Walters.
Mr. Chairman, that's my brother. He's absent today. I want to speak on behalf.
We can't do that until you are registered. So, are you registered?
I'm not registered yet. I was told I could.
You'll still have to register.
Yeah, you'll still have to register. So can you go out in the hall and register on the kiosk? Thank you. So let's move on. So we're going to show Brian Walters not testifying and against the bill. Chair calls Jeff Nierenstedt. Did I say that any more close? Needstead. Okay. Well, I needed Wally here. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Jeff Needstead. I'm here to represent Southwest Tow Operators and myself.
and I'm opposed to House Bill 3478. What most people don't understand is there are rules we must follow under rotation agreements and contracts with cities and counties, as well as the state. So when a tow company is dispatched to the scene of an accident, the county or municipal law enforcement agency, we must clear the road, return it back to the way it was, and make it safe for travel. We are expected to do this before we can confirm whether they even have coverage, if they have the correct coverage, or if we'll ever get paid. The towing industry is one of the only privately funded industries that is asked to work for free, sir. And on an average, we get paid on 50 to 60% of the recoveries we do. We already have to navigate multiple policies, policy caps, coverage issues to try to get paid. There's no denying that we have bad actors out there. Every industry does. The bad actors equal about 5% of the towing industry in the state of Texas. Punishing the 95% that are doing it correctly, we need to find a way to deal with the bad actors and not penalize the people that are doing it correctly. I understand that there are issues with overpricing, but there are already remedies in place such as tow hearings, lawsuits, filing complaints with TDR, and many more. But we should not be forced to go to mediation when our business operates under the rates dictated by a governmental agency. If it just is not the answer. We must go after the bad actors and not the entire industry. Over a decade ago, the average recovery bill was around $5,500 to $6,500. Back then, a heavy-duty wrecker cost about $200,000 to $400,000. Insurance has doubled. The price of wreckers has went up to $750,000 to $1 million for a piece of equipment that we use to clear the roadways. Some of the examples that inflate these bills are when you get into the cargo, when you have hazmat loads, pork, beer, liquor. There's all kinds of stuff that we have to clean up off the highway to make that roadway safe for travel again. The $20,000 mediation trigger is just another layer that could delay payment and even further and take up needed space in our stores facilities for an extended period of time, even though we still have our bills and staffs we need to pay for the job that we have done. House Bill 3478 will further harm our ability to do business. It is not unusual to wait months to get paid already on these types of cleanups and recovery incidents as it is. Again, this is just another layer to delay payment.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, there are questions of the witness? Not seeing any. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Chair calls James Bennett. Mr. Bennett, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is James Bennett. I represent Southwest Tow Operators Association, and I'm opposed to this bill. I have several contracts with municipalities, and in these contracts, the rates are dictated.
Hang on one second, Mr. Bennett. We have you registered as you're representing Beards Towing and yourself.
Beards Towing and myself, as well as Southwest.
Wait, that's not how you're registered. Okay. So
James Bennett and myself, then.
Okay, you're at Beards Towing and yourself, and we can change it if you want to change it, but if...
Southwest Tow Operators as well, please.
Okay, hang on one second.
Absolutely.
Continue. She can't type, it's fine.
Apparently, I can't either.
Are we good?
You're good.
Okay, Mr. Bennett. So now we have you, James Bennett Jr., registered as testifying against the bill on behalf of Beards Towing, Southwest Tow Operators, and yourself.
Yes, sir.
That's all correct?
Yes, sir.
Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, like I said, I'm opposed to this bill. I have several contracts that the rates are already dictated by a governmental agency. And then within those rates, on a heavy-duty spill, if we've got an accident that has to have cargo cleanup or an accident that has to have hazmat cleanup, in my contracts, it states that we're responsible for subcontracting those. With the subcontract rate tacked onto our normal bills, it is well achievable to exceed this $20,000 mark on a consistent basis. So I feel that there'd be a lot of conflict that goes on, that I'm mandated to go to a mediation when I've charged by a contract that I'm within my means. So with that said, I'm 100% against this bill so that this cannot affect our small business. We can't afford to wait 30 to 60 days to get paid on a bill and wait on a mediation ruling.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, questions of the witness? Nope. Thank you very much,
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bennett. Okay. Chair calls David Walters. Mr. Walters, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is David Walters. I'm an attorney here in Austin. I represent many people in the towing industry.
No.
I'm sorry.
You're registered as David Walters representing yourself.
Myself, yes.
So that's where we
Oh,
have
I'm sorry.
to
As
leave
a
it.
lawyer, I represent them. I apologize.
Okay.
Chairman King.
David Walters, you're testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are against the bill.
Yes.
That's correct.
King. Yes.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Let's see. Thank you, Chairman King and committee members, for allowing me to testify today. Wrong page. I'm against this bill for several reasons. First, it creates an unconstitutional barrier to the right to sue. This bill would create an unconstitutional barrier to the right of Texas business owners to seek to go to court and recover the fees that are owed to them. That right to seek redress from the government is found in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and in Article 1, Section 27 of the Texas Constitution. Second, this bill fails to bring all necessary parties to the table at this mediation. There are three parties legally responsible for towing charges: the tractor owner, the trailer owner, and the commercial carrier. This bill would allow just one of these parties, this bill would allow all of the parties to avoid payment for up to 76 days. That's assuming 31 days for the first notice, 30 days for the mediation, and up to 15 days for the outcome of the mediation. Now, they would, one of these parties could defer this matter civilly for up to 76 days, while the two parties who were not invited, the vehicle owner and the tractor owner and the trailer owner, incur an additional up to $5,593.60 in storage fees. Now, that rate is set by the state of Texas and is not subject to dispute. Third, Texas already has two separate statutes that require towing fees to be reasonable. That's Texas Transportation Code 545.305 and 3051, which require towing fees to be reasonable. Finally, the bill would deprive two parties of procedural due process by excluding them from the proceeding. The tractor owner and the trailer owner are not invited to participate, yet they will be responsible for the possibly more than $5,500 in storage fees that can occur while the commercial carrier requests this mediation. For those reasons, I'm opposed to this, and I thank you all for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3478?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman, my name's Dana Moore, and I was in transportation when you called my name.
Okay, just give me a call you back up then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Chair calls Dana Moore. Mr. Moore, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Yes, sir. And I will be respectful of the committee's time today, I promise.
like that
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Dana Moore, and I represent the Texas Trucking Association, and we are in support of House Bill 3478. While we recognize that the vehicle towing industry is not only a vital part of our transportation network, but also that it is comprised primarily of reputable tow companies. This bill seeks to address those issues where unscrupulous towing companies seek to take advantage of the motor carrier industry. The towing of a large truck and semi-trailer requires the use of large wreckers and the enhanced skill of tow operators. It sometimes requires the cleanup of spilled cargo and other cleanup duties. TXTA recognizes that these costs will always be much more than those required for passenger cars and light trucks. However, our association routinely receives reports from our members where a tow company is charging anywhere from 2 to 4 times the normal rate and then holds the vehicle or vehicles and cargo hostage until all the charges are paid. The filing of a civil suit in most cases is the only recourse the motor carrier has. We've had reports of billing in the amounts of $50,000 to $75,000. And I heard somebody say, well, I go up to $100,000. The typical scenario in these cases is comprised of a commercial vehicle being involved in a crash. Law enforcement responds and calls a tow truck that is on a local rotation system to clear the roadway. The commercial vehicle is then towed to a storage facility as an incident management tow. When the motor carrier attempts to obtain the vehicle, the storage facility has inflated the charges multiple times. The carrier has refused access to the cargo, which in many cases is being hauled for hire. They don't even own it, and can be perishable commodities such as food items or refrigerated. The carrier is now put in the position of paying the inflated charges, accumulating storage fees, and failing to deliver the load. Now, this bill would put into place a mediation process with timelines to expedite the process of resolving these cases. The bill would only apply to those cases, as you've heard, in excess of $20,000 and requires both the carrier and the tow company to engage in a mediation process. And it prevents the storage facility from conducting a public sale of the vehicle until the mediation or the civil suit is ended. TXTA certainly understands how tow charges can vary from tow to tow depending on circumstances. For example, a truck has crashed down a steep ravine, and I'm a retired DPS sergeant and trooper. I have seen this myself. Crashed down a steep ravine may require more than one tow truck and multiple operators, perhaps even a crane. However, inflating these charges multiple times, knowing that the vehicle and cargo can be held hostage and used as a scheme to extort money from a motor carrier should not be allowed. TXTA is in support of this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Members, any questions? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony. All right, now, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3478? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Chairman King to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, and I close.
Thank you very much. That it was succinct. The committee substitute is withdrawn, and if there's no objection, House Bill 3478 will be left pending. Is there objection? Seeing none, House Bill 3478 is left pending. So where am I going now? Yeah. Chair lays out House Bill 3407 and recognizes Representative Spiller to explain his bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for allowing me to lay out House Bill 3407 this afternoon. House Bill 3407, the I. Beth Gary Act, is a personal bill that arose from a tragedy when a constituent was killed in an automobile accident by a state licensed plumber who did not have commercial auto liability insurance. Currently, there's not a requirement for entities licensed under TDLR to carry commercial auto liability coverage, even though these entities use vehicles primarily in a commercial capacity when they work. TDLR only requires a $1 million general liability policy for any activities created on a job site. However, typically, general liability policies have an automobile exclusion. HB 3407 seeks to make commercial auto liability mandatory as part of the insurance requirements for individuals licensed under TDLR, for individuals who primarily use commercial vehicles, primarily in their line of work, to travel to and from their jobs. This insurance protects victims in the unfortunate event that they're involved in an accident, but also protects licensed plumbers from excess judgment amounts recovered from lawsuits arising out of accident claims similar to what occurred in the Gary matter. And with that, Mr. Chairman, subject to any questions that you or the committee may have of me, I want to thank you for your time and respectfully reserve the right to close.
We've got a question for Mr. Spill. Not at this time. We'll give you that right to close. We've got some witnesses, I believe. Chair calls Rick Lord. Nope. Okay, we're going to show Rick Lord as against the bill but not testifying. Chair calls Jacob Smith. Now he wants to talk. Mr. Smith, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman and members. My name is Jacob Smith. I think it shows me representing Local 68. I would like to change that to self, and I would also like to change it to on the bill.
Thank you for that. Let us get that done real quick.
Yes, sir.
Jacob, we'll be right back with you. I'm sure Mr. Spiller appreciates that change. We got it now?
It should be.
Okay, it's all correct. So now we have you as Jacob Smith testifying for yourself, and you're neutral on the bill.
Correct.
Please proceed.
So after talking with Representative Spiller and his wonderful staff, they've opened the door for discussion on language. We were previously against the bill, and I believe Local 68 is still against the bill. And then that's the language. And really it's the belief that to get to the crux of this issue, you can't just go after one industry. You should go and make everybody have adequate insurance. So when someone gets harmed in an auto accident, you have the insurance to cover their damages. And so we believe that this should really be an insurance bill, an insurance committee, and I'd be happy to work with their office on crafting language to require insurance companies to sell adequate insurance to folks in the state of Texas, maybe form insurance policies like we used to do in Texas. So got a few recommendations, and happy to work with the representative if they would so choose. I also would like to say that requiring responsible master plumbers to have commercial license would not cover the rest of the folks that work underneath them. And so it doesn't really get to the crux of the issue. And also, due to the trucking bill passed last session, it would actually make it harder to recover from an insurance company under these commercial policies. So we want to look out for the consumer 100%.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Members, any questions? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Reagan Sahadi. Sahadi?
You were close. Armando Wally's not here to help you.
I know, I need him. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Reagan Sahadi, and I represent myself, and I am for the bill.
Okay.
I wanted to add a little bit of an anecdotal twist to what Representative Spiller was saying, because I represented the family of Ibeth Gary. And it was December 11th of 2020. Ibeth Gary was in Lampasas, Texas, and headed to work at Walmart. The plumbing truck that struck her hydroplaned, hit her head on, and killed her right in front of the Walmart. I met with the family. I discussed their options. We decided to pursue a lawsuit and a claim against the plumbing company. But this individual, turns out, did not have commercial auto insurance. I was surprised by that. I thought, given that this was a plumbing company and he was a master plumber licensed under the TDLR, that he would have commercial auto insurance. So I sent a subpoena to the TDLR and got his required $1 million CGL policy back to me, and it had an auto exclusion. And echoing what Representative Spiller said, most, if not all, CGL policies, and that means commercial general liability policies, have an auto exclusion. So I had to look this family in the eye and tell them that all they could recover to make their family whole was the individual's $30,000 personal auto policy. And I was shocked, I was surprised that in this day and age, that there was no requirement for this licensed master plumber to have a commercial auto policy, even though the truck he was driving was an F450, weighed over 11,000 pounds, and if it had crossed state lines, it would be considered a commercial auto. Most plumbing companies And I appreciate what the last speaker said, and I agree with him. Most plumbing companies, most electricians, most air conditioning companies that are licensed under the TDLR probably carry commercial auto insurance, just as a matter of safety and principle. But it's not a requirement, and it should be. And we shouldn't be picking on just plumbers. It should be any entity that is licensed under the TDLR that uses their vehicle in the course and scope of their employment a majority of the time, like a plumber, like an electrician, and like an AC tech. And we have all seen the numbers and licenses that are required to be put on the side of the vehicles. So that's the spirit and letter of why we're here today and why the bill is proposed. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman King.
Yes, sir. Chair calls Lisa Hill. Lisa Hill? Okay. Ms. Hill, would you please, for the record, state your name, who you represent, and your position on this bill?
My name's Lisa Hill. I'm the Executive Director for the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. We're neutral on the bill, and I didn't think I chose to testify, but I'm happy to answer a question if you need me to.
I don't think we have any. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
That's it? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3407? Hearing none, Chair recognizes Representative Spiller to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I just want to bring up one thing. To me, the relevant issue here is the cost difference between just a personal liability insurance policy that everyone is required to have versus the cost of a commercial policy. That cost is relatively minimal. There's very little difference. In fact, 37% of those policies are less than $100 a month. But that would provide here the type of coverage that we're asking for. So with that, I'd request your favorable consideration, and I'd close. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. If there's no objection, House Bill 3407 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 3407 is left pending. We'll go to here, where it is. Oh, that one? Do you see? Before or after? Okay, one second. Let's get here. That way? Okay. Okay. All right. Chair lays out House Bill 2350 and recognizes Chairman Harris to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Appreciate the opportunity to lay this bill out before you today. This is a refile of a bill this committee passed out last session. Simply put, this bill is about eliminating redundant licensure or registration requirements for different types of trades in Texas. A growing trend, several cities in Texas are requiring their own forms of licenses and registration paperwork for general contractors, electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, when these trades already have licensure requirements through the state. House Bill 2350 preempts these duplicative requirements and eases the economic and logistical burdens imposed on these workers. Thank you, members. I will defer to the witnesses to speak for the bill and reserve my right to close.
Okay, we're going to have that. Is there any questions for Mr. Harris? Don't see any yet, so we'll call you back in a minute.
Lots of questions, but I won't ask.
Okay. Chair calls Brianna Gordley. Ms. Gordley, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you so much. My name is Brianna Gordley. I represent Texas Appleseed, and I'm here to testify against, respectfully, House Bill 2350. I want to start by saying that if implemented, House Bill 2350 would effectively spread predatory lending. And how I mean that is that currently payday and auto title lending businesses are regulated under the state regulatory body, the Texas Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. And so because these bodies are registered, any ordinances, policies, laws that do affect them would effectively be preempted. And And why that's concerning to us at Texas Appleseed is because 49 cities across the state have adopted a payday and auto title lending ordinance that would affect and help support consumers that do take out these types of predatory loans. So for example, these are very basic standards, limiting the size of the loan to the borrower's income, requiring that a certain amount of payments actually do pay off the principal of the loan instead of just paying off fees. And so these are really basic consumer protections for these loans. And we're really concerned that if repealed, if these ordinances become void, that over 11 million Texans would be effectively negatively affected by these types of loans. I do want to throw out a couple of statistics. A report conducted by the Perryman Group back in December of 2022 did find that over the past decade, $1.6 billion in annual gross domestic product and over 2,100 jobs have been lost due to these loans. And over the past decade, over $18 billion has been drained from the pockets of Texas consumers because of these ordinances. And these ordinances are the only current protections that consumers have against payday and auto title lending businesses. We have tried not very effectively to pass state law across the state to regulate these businesses, and to no avail. So community members, nonprofit leaders, faith-based communities stepped up for their communities to say, we see an issue and we need to put protections in place. And so we do have concerns. And Representative Harris did mention that this bill was filed last session. Last session, it included a carve-out for payday and auto title lending businesses. This session, it doesn't. And so we are concerned. We have spoke to his office about not only including that language again, but updating it to reflect current market practices. And so again, I want to state these are very crucial protections. Across 49 cities, they cover 11 million Texans, and we're extremely concerned that if passed, this ordinance would be void.
Okay. Members, any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Jim Allison. Jim, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jim Allison. I'm the senior counsel for the County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas since 1983. First of all, let me point out that this bill does include counties.
First of all, would you state your position?
We're opposed to the bill as filed.
Thank you.
The bill includes counties, not just cities, and counties are very different from cities. Also, the definition in this bill of license includes permits. We don't issue many licenses, but we do a lot of permitting of various occupations that you have granted us the authority to regulate. And that's the difference. We don't have general ordinance powers. We can't pass ordinances unless the state legislature has granted us that authority. Counties only have the authority granted by the legislature. So if we're doing it now, it's because you've given us the power to do it. And every 2 years, we're back before you because you have the power to amend our partnership agreement every 2 years, and you do, and you have the power to repeal them. So there's nothing that we're doing that's not already authorized by statute, and that's your right or your political subdivision. Unfortunately, this bill would extend the power to state agencies to, by rule or regulation, overrule the authority that you've given to counties to regulate these various occupations. The areas and also contracts, it covers contracts as well as licenses and permits. The areas in which you have given us the authority to regulate also usually give the county the discretion to decide how little or how much you need. What we need in Harris County may be very different from what we need or don't need in Hemphill County. And so you give us the power, usually locally, to decide that. You sometimes do that through bracket laws and say, well, this county above a certain population can do this. We don't need that in smaller counties. The bill, unfortunately, would preempt all that and allow state agencies by rule to make those determinations. A few of the things that you'll recall in which you have given us authority that would come under this bill are slaughterhouses, massage parlors, game rooms, sexually oriented businesses, wild animals. I found 12 chapters in the local government code that would be affected by this bill and would preempt the current county authorities that you have given us. Subdivisions, fire codes, alarm systems, daycare centers, explosives and firearms in subdivisions, outdoor lighting, water wells, airport zoning, private correctional facilities, fire protection, fireworks, hazardous materials. I don't think that by any means that Chairman Harris intends to extend a one-size-fits-all system of regulation like they have in California and New York to Texas. That's not the Texas way. And hopefully we can continue to work with him to perfect the bill and, in fact, perhaps even remove counties from it since we're already under your control.
Thank you, Mr.
Be happy
Allison.
to answer any questions.
Members, questions? Mr. Allison? Don't see any. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Bill Lauterbach. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Lauterbach, and I appear here today as a member of the Texans for Economic Freedom Coalition in support of House Bill 2350. In December of last year, the Texas Comptroller issued a report to the governor and to you, the legislature, listing all the occupational licenses required by the state of Texas. The report identified 802 unique types of licenses issued by 45 different state entities. 802 unique types of licenses issued by 45 different state entities. Honestly, I had no idea that many occupations required a license from the state of Texas. As of last year, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation alone issued 228 separate types of occupational licenses, which are held by about 860,000 Texans. Since 2017, Texas had made progress in reforming occupational licensing. The legislature and TDLR have reduced the number of licenses required and the educational requirements for others, making it easier for those seeking to enter certain professions. And the 85th legislature removed more than 15,000 licensing requirements. We applaud the legislature for their work in this regard. House Bill 2350 represents another important step in helping individual Texans engage in our state's vibrant economy. Simply put, this bill prevents a local government entity from imposing an occupational license on any profession for which the state of Texas already issues and administers such a license. There should be no duplication. If a person meets the licensing requirements imposed by the state for a particular occupation, he or she should not be burdened with the time and expense, the payment of a fee to the local government entity, for securing the same type of license that he has already or she has already received from the state. The policy should be simple. One job, one license, and you're good to go to work. Thank you for your attention. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the witness? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony. Okay, Chair calls Catherine Bruning. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name's Catherine Bruning, and I'm with the City of Houston, and we oppose the bill. The City of Houston appreciates this opportunity to voice our concerns about House Bill 2350 relating to the authority of a political subdivision to regulate certain activities. The bill proposes to add Chapter 60 to the Occupations Code, preempting local licensing requirements. Houston opposes this bill because it is overly broad in scope, preempting cities' ability to regulate certain aspects of local businesses within our jurisdiction. Municipalities create regulations for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. But this bill would prohibit our adopting any regulations that are more restrictive than the state regulations. In many instances, this preemption will have the unintended consequence of endangering public safety. For example, in 2017 in Houston, we had a fire in a boarding home and a separate fire in an unlicensed congregate living facility that resulted in 3 deaths and evacuation of 29 elderly and disabled residents. After extensive research into which governmental entity was responsible for establishing standards for such facilities, the City of Houston discovered that there was not a state or federal agency directly responsible for establishing the building safety for many of the group homes that do not fit into certain categories. We found that nursing homes and assisted living facilities have very strict regulations at several levels of government. But a windowless metal warehouse that's been divided into living areas for daily rental by low-income occupants or even single-family homes that house 3 or 4 people that need assistance are largely unregulated as far as the structural safety. Even those homes that are regulated at some level as to their operations, such as single-family homes used to house parolees from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, do not have established structural safety regulations. After these tragic events, City of Houston employees visited many of these housing facilities that were used for congregate living, including the ones that had been approved by TDCJ for parolees to be released to. During those inspections, we noted that a lot of the homes had been altered and altered to increase the number of residents that could be accommodated. We saw instances of raw sewage running through yards. We saw instances of illegally installed plumbing and electrical systems, insufficient egress and ingress, and all of those can cause fires, death traps in a fire situation. The other, so as a result, we did create ordinances requiring correctional facilities, alternate housing facilities, lodging facilities to be required to obtain a license and be permitted.
Thank you, Ms. Bruning. Members, are the questions of this witness? Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Chair calls Rod Bordelon. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Rod Bordelon. I am with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I am testifying in favor of House Bill 2350. I was going to start off with what was already mentioned, that the comptroller's report of 800 plus individual licenses that are issued in the state of Texas. I will mention that Texas apparently ranks first in the nation in terms of number of regulations. That's not a first that I like to brag about, but we have more licenses and license types in Texas than any other state in the country. That was a report that just came out a couple of days ago from the Archbridges Institute in Washington, D.C. And not just the licenses and the license types themselves, but we got to remember all the regulations that go with that. There are over 260,000 regulatory restrictions in the Texas Administrative Code that go with a lot of these licenses. So every one of these licensees have to be compliant with all those licenses. I'm pretty familiar with the insurance code, having practiced in that area over the years, and I'm responsible for implementing some of those and instituting some of those regulations. There's 53 licenses in that one code alone, in the insurance code. There's 2,000 pages of statutory regulations and over 2,000 pages of Texas Administrative Code regulations. So we got to remember the burden of complying with all that is what's important here. So the more consistency we can have, the better. And so the more we can say the state of Texas is the preeminent authority on these licenses and regulations, and less the 350 different home rule entities that are out there providing additional ordinances. If it's not mentioned in the state of Texas, if the state of Texas doesn't regulate it, this bill would not prevent an ordinance at a local entity. It would just preempt those that
that purport to try to regulate further what is already regulated in the state of Texas. And that, therefore, we think it's a pretty good bill.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Chair calls Tim Morstad. Mr. Morstad? Okay, we're going to show Mr. Morstad as against the bill, not testifying. Chair calls Jenny Andrews. Ms. Andrews, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Andrews. I'm a policy analyst with the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and I'm testifying today in opposition to HB 2350 as introduced. This broad bill, we fear, would preempt hundreds of local ordinances on dozens of topics, but we are most concerned with payday lending ordinances adopted by 49 cities that establish a baseline of fair market prices for payday and auto title loans, which trap many families in unending debt, draining local charitable resources and harming local communities. While this may not be the intent of the author, we feel there are far too many unintended consequences to moving the bill forward. We recognize that it is a legitimate interest to protect the livelihood of working Texans, and it is precisely this concern for working families which moves us to oppose the bill. TCCB has worked for the last 12 years in partnership with local officials, community organizations, and local clergy to curb the abusive practices of payday and auto title lenders. We have many families that come to our St. Vincent de Paul societies and Catholic charities asking for financial assistance, and we find that a great number of them all have the same problem, outstanding payday loan debt. When left unchecked, this industry is known to prey on the poor with an average of 200 to 500% APR, with a $500 loan often costing $1,000 to $3,000 to repay. These rates are 2 to 5 times higher than the rates charged in other states where these loans remain legal but have reasonable limits on what they can charge. And for these reasons, the bishops throughout the state have all been personally involved in the passage of payday lending ordinances in their local diocese. And the passage of HB 2350, looks like I have an error there on my handout, would directly undermine their work. These ordinances remain on strong local legal ground following the 2015 ruling in Ace Cash Express versus the City of Denton. And despite that, this bill would provide a path by which the payday lending industry could strike down the reforms and again pull Texans into a cycle of debt. For these reasons, we respectfully request Representative Harris work with local faith leaders to maintain the protections our pastors have fought for in their communities throughout the state. And we ask this committee not to advance the bill without these protections.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions of Ms. Andrews?
Thank you.
Not seeing any. Thank you for being here. Okay, chair calls John Litzler. Litzler? Did I say it wrong? Wally, help me out.
That's pretty good.
I'm off with this. So, for the
Thank you,
record,
Chairman King. John Litzler, here on behalf of the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission. We're speaking in opposition to the bill as filed, in opposition to House Bill 2350. Only in opposition to the bill because of the effect that we believe it would have on local ordinances which regulate payday and auto title lending. If the language to the bill were amended to include an exception for Chapter 393 of the Texas Finance Code, then we would no longer be opposed to the bill. Our issue with the bill is in the broad definition of occupational license, which includes anyone who has to get registered or licensed by the state. Credit service organizations and credit access bureaus, which is what payday and auto title lenders are, they're not technically lenders, they're an intermediary between the borrower and the lender. And so the 10% usury laws that apply to lenders don't apply to these intermediaries. They fall under Chapter 393 of the Finance Code instead. And so they have to register, credit service organizations and credit access businesses have to register with the Texas Secretary of State, And then credit access businesses also have to be licensed by the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. And we're afraid that those simple acts are what caused this bill to preempt these local protections. You've heard from others about our concerns about these bills. You know, why are churches involved? Why are you hearing from Catholic groups and from a Baptist group today? It's because our pastors have led grassroots efforts to get these local ordinances passed. You've heard about 11 million Texans. That's about a third of all Texans that are protected by these bills. So we're not asking this committee to revise the definition of an occupational license under this code. We're not asking it to be narrowed. We're just asking that an exception when it comes to Chapter 393 of the Finance Code be made. The bill already recognizes other exceptions and other important areas where cities retain the right to do regulations. There's an exception in subsection D for zoning. There's one for towing. There's one for sexually oriented businesses. And all we're asking is that there be an exception in there as well for Chapter 393 so that these payday lending regulations stay in place. This, as has already been pointed out to this committee, this is an exception that was in this bill when it was filed last session. It didn't make it into the refile, and all we're asking is that you put it back in. I'm available if anybody has questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, questions? Remember, well, we do have two members. Do we have questions? No, don't see any. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2350? Not seeing any, the chair recognizes Chairman Harris to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I appreciate it very much. Appreciate the people who came to testify today, and definitely willing to work with the members of the committee to make positive changes to the bill. And with that, I close.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. Appreciate that. If there's no objection, House Bill 2350 will be left pending at this time. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 2350 is left pending. Where's that nice bill? Where's Buckley? Okay. So while we're finding the next bill, I think it's appropriate to mention that two of our House colleagues and friends are going through some really bad times today. Representative Holland is currently or has just got finished with his mother's funeral, and our friend Dr. Buckley can't be with us today to lay out his bill because his father's back in the hospital. So I would ask everybody to keep the Holland family and the Buckley family in their prayers today as we move forward. And which brings me to Representative Patterson, who's going to do an excellent job laying out Chairman Buckley's bill. Chair lays out House Bill 2238 and recognizes Chairman Buckley to explain the bill. Oh, Patterson. I'm sorry. We didn't change the script.
You didn't know. You didn't know when you wrote the script.
That's right. Let's try this again. Chair lays out House Bill 2238 and recognizes Representative Patterson to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to lay out this bill for my good friend, Dr. Buckley. In 2011, the Texas Licensed Breeders Program was created and established minimum standards for care for dogs and cats bred for sale, whether in person or online, for certain dog and cat breeders. The program intended to prevent harm and breeding cruelty. In 2020, the Texas Sunset Commission nearly abolished the program for a few reasons, proving that the program is not operating as lawmakers intended and needs reforms to carry out its function successfully. Right now in Texas, people are operating outside of the law because the program is difficult to enforce. Cruelty is happening, and this bill helps stop that. There are two loopholes in the current program that this bill closes. Currently, only breeders that disclose sales of 20 puppies or kittens per year are covered by the program. Since many breeders conduct untraceable cash sales, they are able to remain outside of the program with no oversight or regulation. By changing the licensing requirement from 11 breeding females to 5, all commercial breeders in Texas will be under the program's oversight. People that breed as a business should be looked at differently than breeding for a hobby, and this is very important. This bill does not impact Texas hobby breeders who breed for 4 or fewer females a year. There is a clear distinction, and this bill does not change that. Moreover, this bill maintains all the exemptions currently in the program. Exemptions for dogs bred for herding livestock, working on farms and ranches, dogs bred for competing in field trials or hunting tests, as well as dogs bred to hunt, track, point, flush, or retrieve. Those are all exempted. The health and welfare of the animals is very important to me and to Dr. Buckley. I want this program to exist and to work effectively to protect both pets and consumers in Texas. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have and reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Representative Patterson. See no question, we'll move on. There are several witnesses signed up for this bill. Ronald Descharme.
Very good. I was about to raise my hand and said that must be me you're looking for.
Got a clutch here beside me. So, Mr. Descharme, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Okay, my name is Ronald Ducharme. I'm with Rescue Magazine, and I am for the bill. I'm actually the president of Rescue Magazine, which is an animal welfare organization here in the state of Texas. So good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman and committee members, to everyone today. I'd like to talk to you about why breeders should be licensed. Breeding animals, whether it be dogs, cats, or other domesticated animals, can be a rewarding and fulfilling experience. However, it's important to ensure that breeding is done responsibly and ethically. This is where licensing comes in. First and foremost, licensing ensure that the breeders are knowledgeable about their animals they are breeding. A licensed breeder has to, should pass a series of tests to demonstrate their knowledge of animal care, nutrition, and genetics. This ensures that the animals are being bred in a safe, healthy environment and reduce the risk of illness and genetic defects. Furthermore, licensing helps prevent animal abuse and neglect. A licensed breeder is held to a higher standard of care than an unlicensed breeder, and they are subject to regular inspections to ensure that they are providing the adequate care for their animals. This ensures that animals are not being kept in inhumane conditions or subjected to unnecessary suffering. Licensing also helps to protect the consumer. A licensed breeder is required to provide accurate information about the animal they are selling, including its breed, health status, and any genetic condition that may be predisposed to. This ensures the consumers are not misled or defrauded, and they are getting a healthy animal, and that will be a good fit for their family. Now, most important, licensing helps to control the population of animals. Unlicensed breeders may be more likely to breed animals indiscriminately, leading to an overpopulation of animals that may end up in shelters or on the streets. Licensing ensures that breeding is done responsibly and with a purpose, helping to control population and reduce the number of animals that end up homeless or in the shelters. Now, I have the privilege of working with over 50 agencies here in Texas. We all agree that going backwards or removing any license standards that are in place would be a mistake. Going forward with new guidelines for the 5 breeding females will be in the best interest of population control. I'm in constant contact with our directors of our shelters throughout the state, and we are in agreement in shelters and rescues are overran with animals. Population is a problem. The common sense legislation will save the taxpayers of our state with the cost of housing unwanted animals. My father was a breeder many years ago and loved the fact that his animals exceeded breeding standards. My father would comment that breeders who really care should have high standards for their animals. In conclusion, license is an important tool to ensure that breeding is done responsibly and ethically. It ensures that animals are kept in a safe and healthy condition, prevents animal abuse and neglect, protects the consumers, and helps control the population of animals. Therefore, I urge you to support licensing of the breeder and go with Dr. Buckley's bill. We need to get our animal population under control. Thank you.
I appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being here. Members, questions? Not seeing any. Thank you again.
And thank you.
Chair calls Mary Morrison.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Nicole Morrison. I am here on behalf of the Toy Club of Greater Houston and AKC Limited Breed Dog Club. I am vehemently opposed to this bill.
Hang on one second, Ms. Morrison. You are only registered as being here on behalf of Toy Club of Greater Houston itself.
Yes.
That's
But I'm just describing what it is.
right. Well,
Yeah.
let's just keep it to how it's registered.
Okay.
So we show you as Mary Morrison, against the bill, on behalf of Toy Club of Greater Houston and self.
Yes, and myself.
Thank you. Please
There we
proceed.
go. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for this opportunity to address why this bill meets the definition of chronic insanity. If insanity is doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results, then this bill is definitely it. I am currently serving as the rescue coordinator for the Toy Club of Greater Houston, and I can tell you that I don't get purebred, well-bred dogs from licensed breeders in my rescue program. The rescue dogs that I get into my program and place in their new forever homes typically come from out-of-state producers who are whelping puppies for profit. This bill does nothing to address that. Furthermore, the AKC, of which I belong to member clubs, inspects approximately 70,000 breeder member kennels every year. Their policies mandate that their field inspectors report substandard living conditions, animal cruelty, and animal neglect to the appropriate local authorities. This bill adds an extra layer of regulation that simply is not needed when the vast majority of kennels are already inspected. We also have policies within the Toy Club of Greater Houston, as well as the other clubs of which I'm a member. We also have policies that any consumer who purchases a dog from one of our members can file a grievance, and we can intervene and attempt to resolve their issue before going to litigation. As a lawyer, however, I've actually litigated some of these cases, and the consumer protection laws in effect in the state of Texas already protect consumers adequately. And just for the record, I noticed that it's previously been mentioned that this law, the current law for dog and cat licensing breeders is necessary, but difficult to enforce. And that this law is not going to affect hobby breeders. The reality is that hobby breeders in general will have more than 5 intact brood bitches. And let's call it what it is. It's not an intact female, it's a brood bitch. That's the technical term. Just because I have them in my kennel doesn't mean that they're going to get pregnant, doesn't mean they're going to produce puppies. And yet I would be required under this law to obtain a kennel license. Now, currently I don't have any brood bitches, but that may change. I noticed too, this licensure does not help control the unwanted pet population in Texas. Thanks to the internet, many buyers purchase from out of state and import, and those dogs unfortunately end up in rescues and shelters. The other big issue, having walked the shelter in Houston, you're not finding well-bred, purebred dogs from hobbyist preservation breeders who care about their animals. You're finding mixed breed strays and dogs from producers. If this committee truly cares about animal welfare, this bill is not necessary. There are plenty of other things we can do to protect animals and Texans. And I really hope that we look at some of those options. I also would like to extend an invitation to everyone on the committee and their staffs. You are more than welcome to come to our Toy Club shows the last weekend of August in Houston, Hyatt Regency West. You are more than welcome to come as my guest and talk to the constituents who will be affected by this.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
Thank you.
A question.
Oh, well, there's a question.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Patterson.
Thank you. It's a lot of gumption to say if this committee really cared about this issue, first off. So can you describe for me what you said at the beginning or toward the beginning of your testimony where you said that you don't find purebred dogs that are in situations in shelters? You said that they are from, what did you say?
They're from producers. They're not from competent preservation breeders.
So I think you said they're from out-of-state producers that are...
In many cases, virtually all of the dogs that I've received in my rescue work over the years have not been from competent Texas preservation breeders. They have been from out of state.
Okay, and how are they brought in from out of state?
People oftentimes buy it over the internet, which is becoming increasingly more common. In some cases, there were situations where they moved from out of state, came to Texas, were no longer able to care for their animal. Unfortunately, in many cases, there have been situations where a dog was sort of passed around between friends or relatives.
Okay, and how do y'all get the data that a dog was passed around between relatives or that they moved to the state and could no longer care? I mean, is that filled out on the paperwork when a dog's dropped off?
We have a comprehensive questionnaire that I require people who are surrendering their dogs to complete, yes.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that a lot of these dogs that come in from out of state would come into the state and sold commercially through retail pet stores that sell retail dogs?
Actually, no, I have not run into a single dog yet that's been sold by a pet store.
You have not ever run into a dog sold by a
I
pet
have
store.
not had a single person.
You
commit to
opposed a bill
buying-
last session, House Bill 1818, that would have shut down commercial sales, retail sales of dogs, where people walk into the store and buy these dogs, essentially paying out month after month over time. You guys opposed that, and you're going to tell me today, your testimony under oath before this committee is that you are going to tell me that there are no dogs out there
That's
that
not my
are,
testimony.
I'm sorry.
My testimony,
I'm sorry, I'm
I
not done
personally
yet.
have not.
I'm not done yet.
Okay, continue.
You're going to tell me that there are no dogs in these kennels or at any of these rescue shelters that come in from commercial puppy mills brought in to groups like Petland that sell these dogs commercially. They're all brought in by people that moved here from out of state and could no longer afford their dog.
I can't speak to that. I'm speaking to my own experience about the dogs that were released to my rescue program.
That is unbelievable. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions, members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair calls Jacob Hupp. Mr. Hupp, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
Hello, my name is Jacob Hupp, and I represent the American Kennel Club. We are opposed to this legislation. Chairman King and members of the House Licensing and Administrative Procedures Committee. The American Kennel Club is here today on behalf of our 302 kennel clubs in Texas, comprised of thousands of Texans committed to responsible pet ownership. AKC must express serious concerns in opposition to House Bill 2238, which would regulate dog ownership as a commercial enterprise. This bill would further violate the constitutional rights of AKC's constituents by forcing them to open their private homes to inspections, even if they do not sell a dog. The law that created the Dog and Cat Breeder Act was never intended to regulate small-scale hobbyists that operate private breeding programs in their homes. The elimination of the Dog and Cat Breeder Act's commercial activity requirement would create a policy whereby many home-based hobbyists' mere ownerships of dogs would require them to be regulated as commercial entities. Existing law presumes an intact dog is used for the purpose of breeding and requires an owner to prove that they are not, in fact, using a dog for breeding purposes. This is an impracticable task. AKC clubs are comprised primarily of small-scale hobbyists who own dogs for the purpose of breed preservation, participating in AKC events, and in some cases providing a very small number of pets to a few carefully selected homes. These are not commercial entities. In 2021, AKC sanctioned 1,329 events in the state of Texas with 174,000 participants. Those events injected hundreds of millions of dollars into the Texas economy every single year. The vast majority of those who participate in these events are hobbyists, and they keep dogs intact so that they can participate. AKC firmly believes this bill will only serve to punish responsible dog owners and breeders, and it will fail to bring those already operating outside of the scope of the law into compliance. Contrary to the sponsor's claims, common sense demonstrates that those operating outside of the scope of the law will continue to operate outside of the scope of the law. This is further evidenced by the Dog and Cat Breeder Act's failures as detailed in the Texas Sunset Commission's recommendation to sunset the law in 2020 due to its unenforceable nature and high administrative costs. Proponents of this bill and the sponsor further claim this legislation will bring Texas law in line with existing federal laws and other state breeder laws, but this is fundamentally inaccurate. If passed as written, this legislation will constitute one of the most restrictive state breeder licensing laws in the United States. And this bill goes far beyond federal licensing requirements administered by the USDA. Federal law requires licensure only for those who sell dogs sight unseen. Federal licensure does not apply to those selling dogs when the buyer, seller, and dog are all present. AKC is happy to engage in a dialogue to address the sponsor's concerns, but the fundamental flaws that have persisted with the Dog and Cat Breeder Act since the law's inception will only be exacerbated by this legislation. AKC hopes to work with the sponsor to craft legislation that holds all who sell dogs accountable without unfairly targeting AKC's core constituency. Please join AKC in opposition to House Bill 2238 and instead work with us to craft a fair and effective and enforceable policy to hold sellers accountable.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, questions? Nope. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Randy Turner. Mr. Turner, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Randy Turner. I'm here for myself as an individual, and I am very much for this bill. Mr. Chairman, members, I practice animal law in Fort Worth, Texas, and I've done so for the last 30 years. I'm a founder and former chair of the animal law section of the State Bar of Texas. I'm board certified in civil trial law. I do a whole lot of consumer litigation, and I've done this for decades. I represent humane societies, wildlife sanctuaries, consumers who've purchased dogs from breeders, and that's actually why I'm here. I've done ADA claims with service animals. I teach animal control officers, lawyers, law students. I'm here to tell you that this bill is needed. I'm not here for the animal welfare side. This bill is needed to protect consumers. I can say that in the last 30 years, I get calls. I haven't kept track of how many, but several calls every single year from people who've bought puppies or dogs from breeders. And not just, and these have all been Texas breeders. I don't remember getting a call from somebody who bought a dog from an out-of-state breeder. These are Texas breeders. People call me because they buy these dogs. They pay sometimes thousands of dollars. Dogs have parvo, distemper. They're sick, diseased, but they don't find out about it until they bring the dog home. They're bonded with the dog. Now they're spending thousands in vet bills. And they come to see me about what can we do? Can I go after this breeder to help me pay these vet bills? The first thing I do is go to TDLR's website and I look up. They show you who the licensed breeders are. I can tell you that I have never had a call. I've never talked to a client who bought a dog from a licensed breeder since this bill was passed. Never. The only calls I get are people who buy sick and diseased dogs from breeders who aren't licensed. And these are breeders, and these are breeders who have fewer than 11 breeding females. So and the reason is because when they're licensed, there are minimum standards they have to follow. And these unlicensed breeders aren't following those minimum standards. So this is I'm telling you, it's a consumer protection bill. As well as maybe an animal welfare bill, but it's going to, I'm just telling you that it's a problem with these unlicensed breeders. Now I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Members, there are questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Chair calls Kimberly Melancon. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
For the record, my name is Kim Melanson. I'm the director, I'm with Animal Investigation and Response and myself, and we are in support of this bill.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the Director of Emergency Services for the nonprofit DFW-based Animal Investigation and Response. AIR stands with THLN in support of this bill as it aims to eliminate loopholes in the 2011 Texas Licensed Breeder Program. These changes will assist in ensuring commercial breeding facilities meet basic animal standards of care and help protect loving Texas from purchasing unhealthy animals and accidentally becoming complicit in animal cruelty. In a typical year, AIR will work across the state with approximately 30 different animal welfare and law enforcement organizations, including county sheriffs, small town police departments, and municipal shelters. While assisting these organizations in finding puppy mills, our people find things that I wish I could kind of share with you guys: urine burns on animals, puppies and kittens, rusted shut cages that think about what it takes for a cage to be rusted shut and keep an animal confined. Animals' feces inches deep, urine, unsafe levels of urine in these buildings that our law enforcement and animal welfare professionals need to wear respirators and Tyvek to protect them. Imagine what that negatively impacts on an animal living years in that condition. Genetic deformities that are inadvertently bred into these dogs that are because of irresponsible breeding practices. In one instance, we had an entire population of dogs with no bottom jaws. That was a genetic deformity that was bred into them. None of this addresses the mental and emotional damage evidenced by dogs pacing in their crates. You see pictures of dogs leaning with their heads up against. This is unnatural behavior for animals. The Texas Sunset Law identified it, did not necessarily say it needed to shut down this law. It said there was two things that made it problematic in enforcing and made it difficult to enforce the TLBP. This stands to correct those things. However, in spite of those loopholes, between 2013 and 2016, there were 466 complaints filed against unlicensed breeders. By contrast, there were only 20 complaints filed against licensed breeders. Let me be clear, we are talking about commercial breeders, not hobby breeders. Just two changes will make this the TLBP more effective. One, lowering the number of breeding females from 11 to 5, or bitches as someone preferred to have them called. Keep in mind, 5 breeding females can still produce between 60 and 80 puppies a year. The second would be removing the cash threshold, removing the sales threshold for 20 animals a year. This removes the loophole that allows these people to operate under the radar and not have the under regulation.
Melizon, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Questions? Nope. Okay. Chair recognizes or calls Courtney Burns. Ms. Burns, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Courtney Burns. I'm representing the SPCA of Texas and myself, and I'm for the bill. Hello, my name is Courtney Burns. I'm a chief investigator of the Animal Cruelty Investigations Unit for the SPCA of Texas, and I'm the chair of the Dallas County Animal Response Team. I'm a licensed peace officer in the state of Texas, and I've been investigating large-scale breeding facilities for about 7 years. I'm here representing the SPCA of Texas, North Texas's oldest and largest animal welfare organization, founded in 1938 in support of House Bill 2238 that aims to reform the Texas Licensed Breeders Program, TLBP. This critical program helps ensure that commercial breeding facilities meet basic standards of care and protects consumers from purchasing sick or unhealthy dogs and cats by requiring that certain cat and dog breeders in Texas are licensed and inspected. It's important to note that hobby breeders, those with 4 or fewer breeding females, will continue to be exempt from the TLBP. The TLBP was created to prevent the cruel treatment of dogs and cats in commercial breeding operations. Before the law passed, Texas law enforcement agencies routinely seized hundreds of dogs and cats in cruel conditions from commercial breeding operations. Nonprofits and local agencies in rural, under-resourced communities often bore the costs associated with seizing and caring for these animals. Since our Animal Cruelty Investigations Unit began responding to alleged animal cruelty in the 1980s, the SPCA of Texas has seized thousands of dogs, puppies, cats, and kittens from puppy and kitten mills and has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at the very least over 3 decades to rescue, rehabilitate, and rehome these animals. And we are just one such group doing this work. The TLBP was established to stop breeding cruelty. However, loopholes and unenforceable requirements are preventing it from working as lawmakers intended. By making 2 common sense changes, we can establish basic standards of care in all commercial breeding facilities and prevent breeding cruelty before it happens. By lowering the licensing requirement from 11 breeding females to 5, the TLBP will include all commercial breeders in Texas to ensure pregnant females and their offspring receive appropriate care and avoid illness and injury. And removing the sales threshold of 20 puppies or kittens per year to be licensed under the TLBP is key to enforcement. Currently, many breeders conduct sales by cash only to sidestep regulation. Importantly, we stand in appreciation of reputable breeders who provide humane and ethical practices in their kennels. These licensed groups are critical partners in the effort to protect animals in the great state of Texas. It's the SPCA of Texas's sincere hope that House Bill 2238 is signed into law to ensure more accountability for those breeders not currently licensed, to prevent animal cruelty, and to ensure basic protections for dogs and cats in large-scale breeding facilities in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Thank you for your testimony. Chair calls Jamie Cantrell. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
It's Jamie Cantrell. I'm the president of the Texas Animal Control Association, and also representing myself as well. So, first, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here to speak on behalf of this. We support the bill. Sorry, didn't get that part in there. The Texas Animal Control Association is the oldest and largest state association in the country. that represents animal care and control personnel all over the state. And our members are the ones who end up having to deal with these problems once they get out of control. So as was stated here, the Sunset Committee did recommend changes be made to this and loopholes to be fixed so that the program could be more efficient and could actually address the problem that the bill was intended to take care of in the beginning. And we also want to make sure that everyone's aware that the exemptions that are in the bill will not be changed in any way whatsoever. So ag, community, hunters, and field trial dogs are all exempt from this. What we see is commercial breeders, large-scale commercial breeders in particular, have a commercial incentive to provide less than stellar care for the animals in there that they are using to create their puppies. And that is where we start to see the cruelty happen. What this will do is ensure that all commercial breeders are permitted and inspected. And honestly, my opinion, responsible breeders should want this just as much as anyone else, because the commercial breeders are the ones that make breeders have a bad name. It gives them a bad reputation. So hobby breeders also, they don't want to be associated with those bad actors, and this will help prevent that from occurring. One of the things that has been brought up are the kennel clubs that oppose this. The way that the kennel clubs operate is that more puppies equals more registrations equals more money coming into their coffers. So of course they're going to have a reason not to want to have these sort of regulations in place. I can also tell you, I've been doing this job in this line of work for over 28 years. I have never received a single complaint from a kennel club investigator. I don't know of a single time that a cruelty case in Texas has initiated from a investigator from a kennel club. Not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying I've been doing it a long time and I have a lot of resources all over the state. I don't know. I've never seen that happen before. So for us, what we want is to have the inspectors able to go in, talk to the breeders and address the issues before it gets to be a problem to where law enforcement, animal services has to get involved with getting those animals out of there. Because what ends up typically happening is it occurs in the more rural areas who tend to have the least amount of resources to address these problems. And that's why you have to have the nonprofits that are up here get involved, because otherwise they're completely overran. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, questions? No? All right, thank you very much. Chair calls Stacy Sutton Kirby. Okay, we're going to show Stacy Sutton Kirby as for the bill, but not testifying. Chair calls Susan Swift. Ms. Swift, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Okay, my name is Susan Swift, and I'm in favor of the bill. I am here today from Palestine, which is in Anderson County. I am the former president of the Anderson County Humane Society, and our shelter,
One second, Ms. Swift, just to make sure this is clear for the record. You are Susan Swift. You're testifying on behalf of self.
Yes.
And as former president of Anderson County Humane Society.
Correct.
And you're for the bill.
Correct.
Okay, please proceed.
Perfect. So our little shelter is the only shelter that carries we take animals from the 5 counties from around us. We operate on donations and tax dollars from Anderson County, city and county. And I'm here from the other end of the breeding business because we are the ones that end up taking the mother dogs when they're not of use anymore to the owner, and we end up having to euthanize those dogs. We also end up with all the puppies and kittens that they can't sell. And unfortunately, too many times, a lot of these animals come in with diseases that are communicable, and we end up having to euthanize everything in the shelter. So I hope you will vote yes and require the dog breeders that have 5 or more dogs or cats to register with the state. because breeding that many animals is a business. It is not a hobby. Registration will help us know who these breeders are and if there's a large number of sick dogs or cats that are being surrendered to shelters, the animal control officers can start investigating before we end up having to do something.
Okay. Thank you for your
Thank
testimony.
you.
Members, questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for being here. All right. That's the last person. Yeah, but Kralik? Okay. Kralik? Okay. Martin Kralik? I think Wally got it wrong. I'm betting.
No, you did good.
All right. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Martin Kralik. I represent the Responsible Pet Owners Alliance, and I'm here to offer opposition to this bill.
Perfect. Go ahead. That's it?
Well, in talking about enforcing this bill, I'm a show dog person that I've came in to get the breed that I needed or I wanted. 20 years ago, when the pet supply ran out, I got into showing. And so I show fox terriers. And one thing led to another, and now I'm president of the Lone Star Fox Terrier Club. I'm legislative liaison to the American Fox Terrier Club and the American Kennel Club. My puppies are born in my wife's lap. My dogs have won awards for their representation of the breed and performance. I cannot withstand regulation as a commercial breeder and have steam cleanable surfaces in my house and rooms larger than my children's rooms without building a kennel. So I'm opposed to this bill.
Okay. Members, questions? Representative Patterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, in this bill, you know, it does exempt show dogs. Are you familiar with that?
Not the attorneys that I've had analyze it did not find that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I believe that's current statute as well, but here, I mean, it exempts dogs bred for all types of things, including hunting and tracking and all sorts of things as well. So you only breed show dogs?
Well, they're wonderful hunting dogs too. So I mean, I could say, well, they're for hunting or they're not or whatever.
Sure. Okay.
The other things that I'm finding after following years and years of spay and neuter requirements by everybody, there's a Dr. Becker that is a famous online doctor. And she was once upon, had the opinion of spaying and neutering everything. And she started getting her customers back. And it was caused by spaying and neutering, and their dogs were getting cancer. So she's backed way off of that. So I don't neuter any of my dogs. I don't spay and neuter them anyway.
Okay.
I had one that lived to be 16 years old, and we never did neuter her. So there's a, you know,
I'm glad
you're trying to legislate this, and it's unenforceable for me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Members, further questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2238? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Representative Patterson to close on House Bill 2238.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Thank you. If there's no objection, House Bill 2238 will be left pending at this time. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, House Bill 2238 is left pending. Yeah. Which one do we do first? Yeah, we'll do those two bills first. Chair lays out House Bill 3171 and recognizes Chairman King to explain his bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 3171. Currently, distillers cannot participate in a festival. This bill will allow distillers to participate in permitted festivals. This bill will allow distillers to bring his or her own product to the festival for sampling. The bill does not allow the sale of bottles at a festival. Safeguards are put in the bill to protect consumers, including the samples, that samples may not exceed 1/2 ounce and no samples may be removed from the festival. TABC will make sure, TABC will make rules to ensure that festivals are taking place in wet counties. Thank you for your consideration. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Chairman King. Members, any questions of Chairman King? Seeing none, we will begin public testimony. We have Lance Lively. Lance, please state your name for the record, who you represent, and your position on the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Lance Lively. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Package Stores Association here in support of Chairman King's bill. We worked out, this was an agreed-to bill that we worked out with the Texas Distilled Spirits Association. We think it's a great business model. Our distillers come to our stores and do tastings quite often, and this will give them an opportunity to get another place to go do that so that the public can sample their products. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair calls Ricky Knox. Ricky, please state your name for the record, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Ricky Knox, President of the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of Texas. I'm here speaking in favor of House Bill 3171. The Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of Texas, we support our Texas distillers. We think Chairman King has a good bill to help our Texas distillers promote their products at Texas festivals. I'll answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Knox. Chair calls Stephanie Houston. Please state your name for the record, who you represent, and your position on the bill, ma'am.
My name is Stephanie Houston, and I'm here testifying in support of the bill on behalf of the Texas Distilled Spirits Association and myself. I'm the president of Island Getaway Rum. We are in Dripping Springs, Texas, and I'm one of a handful of Hispanic female distillery owners in the United States. Prior to my distillery, I spent 25 years in marketing. And so these types of events are critical to emerging brands in Texas. And for those of our members and other distilleries that are not members, this gives them an opportunity to get their brand in front of so many people all at one time. So it's the best use of everyone's marketing time and dollars. And then it also gives us a chance to perhaps get a distribution opportunity from that. I think for those of us who do distribute, it also gives us a chance to provide long-term sales movement inside of the Texas stores. So I see it as like a win-win for everybody. Currently, we have to purchase our own product back when we go to a festival. One that I went to recently, I got a $3,000 bill for my own product. And so being able to bring that would be extremely helpful because everything that was excess of that I was not able to take with me. I don't know where it actually went. So again, we're in support of this bill, and we love to be able to bring our own products to these festivals for those marketing opportunities. Do you have any questions?
Members, any questions of Ms. Houston? Nope. We have one question over here.
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wasn't tracking about, you had to buy your own product to give away. Could you help me explain
Yes.
that? Because it says it in the bill caption. I'm not sure I understand that either. So.
Yes, so our distillery participated in an event in Dallas.
Okay.
And in order to have our booth, we had to pay for the booth. We had to pay for a marketing company to actually serve, and then we also had to buy our own product from the event organizer. And so at the end of that event, we got a bill for $3,000 for our own rums.
So current statute requires the third party to buy it from you and then you buy it from them?
No, I just buy it from them.
How do they get it?
They get it through the distribution and the package stores.
Which
So they
gets
buy
it from you?
Yes.
Okay, so you
So
have
we
to sell
sold
it
it
to the
to them,
distributor,
and then
goes
we
to the
bought it back.
marketer, and then you buy it back?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
And like I mentioned, I think just marketing in general, like we want all of our Texas brands to succeed. We want our stores to succeed. We want all of that. And so any opportunity that we can give our distillers to market without excessive cost, I think would be really amazing and a huge growth.
So if you don't know the answer, this is fine, but like, do the other types of alcohol, like beer, do they have to do that, or can they bring their own inventory and just give it away?
You know what? I'm not well versed in
That's
that.
fine. Probably not
only
a fair
speak to my
question.
own.
but Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Shaheen. Members, any more questions? Ms. Houston, thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Members, is there anyone who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3171? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Chairman King to close on House Bill 3171.
I close.
Thank you, Chairman King. If there's no objection, House Bill 3171 will be left pending. Chair, there's no objection, sorry. The chair hears none, and the House Bill 3171 is left pending, so. Chair lays out House Bill 3656 and recognizes Chairman King to explain his bill.
Thank you, members. Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 3656. This bill would update the Alcoholic Beverage Code and allow Texas distilleries to work together to utilize contract distilling in Texas. Contract distilling is a practice where two or more distillers contract together to share cost for packaging equipment. Currently, the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code has provisions which allow for both wineries and breweries to utilize this practice in their manufacturing process. The bill would also allow distilleries in other states to contract with distilleries in Texas for this purpose. Under this bill, a distillery may not sell another distillery's products. And members, thank you for your consideration. If there's no questions, I would reserve my right to close.
You will have that, Chairman King, and we'll be beginning public testimony. We will call back up Lance Lively. Lance, please state your name again for the record. Your position on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Lance Lively with the Texas Package Stores Association in favor of House Bill 3656. Contract distilling is an issue. It has been. We've had some distilleries in Texas recently that couldn't do this, and we're having to get their products made outside the state and then shipped back in. We worked again with our friends over at the Texas Distilled Spirits Association to come up with some language that we could agree to, and I'm here in support of the measure.
Members, any question of Mr. Lively? Thank you, Mr. Lively. Chair calls Stephanie Houston. Ms. Houston, state your name for the record, your position on this particular bill.
Thank you. I am Stephanie Houston, and I am here in support of the bill on behalf of the Texas Distilled Spirits Association and myself. Again, this bill is important to my distillery. I just came back from a trade mission with the Texas Department of Agriculture to Tokyo, and I've been back for about 5 days. During that time, Texas products are really, really important, and the Japanese really embraced Texas as a whole, and we do actually make all of our products in Texas. I think that's really important. During that trade mission, we have the opportunity to potentially close 4,000 new accounts. We can't do that by ourselves. And what I would love is to keep our Texas-made rum made in Texas by partnering with a larger distillery that can help us achieve that goal. What I would really hate is to send a Texas product that was made in Indiana. We want to keep it here. We want to work with our other distilleries that still have capacity, that have larger bottling lines than we do, and be able to send all of our Texas products all around the world. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions of Ms. Houston? Thank you, Ms. Houston. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3656? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Chairman King to close on House Bill 3656.
I close.
Thank you, Chairman King. If there's no objection, House Bill 3656 will be left pending. Is there any objections? Chair hears none. House Bill 3656 is left pending. Thank you. Do you want to do? Mm-mm. Okay. All right. All right. Chair lays out House Bill 3343 and recognizes Chairman. I'm recognizing myself to explain the bill. Members, thank you for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 3343. With Texas estimated to have 1 million electric vehicles on the road by 2028, according to ERCOT, there are concerns about access to charging stations across the state. Currently, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation has oversights over gas pumps across the state. However, no state agency has a comprehensive oversight structure for electric charging stations. With the growing use of electric vehicles, the companies providing charging services must be regulated for consumer protection and the accuracy of services. House Bill 3343 would grant TDLR the authority to regulate the electric vehicle supply equipment, since they are the best equipped to carry this oversight alongside their existing framework for gas pumps. And with that, members, I would take questions and would reserve my right to close. You have it. Seeing no questions, I believe we do have some witnesses. Okay. Tom Smitty Smith. Smitty, for the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on this bill.
Hi, my name is Tom Smith. Most people know me as Smitty. I now represent the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance. It's an alliance of folks who are utilities, manufacturers, chargers, researchers, and advocates for electric vehicles. And we support this bill. And we think it's important, just like gas pumps are regulated and inspected on a periodic basis as a process for filing complaints, that there be something similar set up for electric vehicles. It's projected that by 2033, 50% of all new vehicles sold in Texas will be electric, about 2.5 million, and that number is expected to grow exponentially as there are more and more vehicles on the market over the next decade or two. So it's essential that we get processes, foundational pieces in place to be able to handle this growing industry, and this is one of those that we think is critical to being able to make sure that we have a smooth transition into this new future. We think your bill is a great bill, and we support the idea of having it at TDLR because of the professionalism that they have exhibited in dealing with gas pumps. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions any of y'all might have.
Representative Sheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So why do you want to regulate EV charging stations? I heard because
we just want to make
a lot
sure
of people are going to use them, but what are you trying to protect consumers from?
Great question. We just want to make sure that just like on gas pumps, that you get the same amount of energy that you're paying for. So that if you're paying for 60 kilowatt hours, you get 60 kilowatt hours. We want to make sure that the prices are displayed. So we know when you're pulling up to the pump, how much you're paying for a kilowatt hour, or if it's a by charge kind of situation. Where,
yeah, but I don't have that for my house there's no, I do?
Yeah, every month you pay X price per kilowatt hour. And that
There's
price
nobody-
may
there's
vary
nobody
according
coming
to
and
the time you
inspecting-
use it.
There's nobody coming to doing an inspection to see if I'm being charged accurately. There's certainly regulatory over the utility industry, but nobody's, that I'm aware, there's no agency that's protecting me from those things.
And you got me on that one.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know if we should just automatically start regulating something. I understand your point that the gas pumps are regulated. I think that's the ag commissioner. I don't know if I'm seeing it here yet, but.
It used to be the ag commissioner, now it's TDLR.
Oh, that's
And
right,
That's
you're right.
been a subject of some controversy. But your point's well taken. And I think the difference here is that at the time your meter was installed at your house, there was a test done by the electrician to make sure that what he was seeing on his meters is what was being seen on your electric meter. There are also processes in place if you have a complaint to where you can call up that transmission, distribution utility, or whomever is providing you the electricity and get that tested and get those complaints resolved through either your utility or through the Public Utilities Commission.
Okay.
So we do have a similar process in place. And the other thing that I would like to mention is these are high utilization commercial facilities. And just as I'm sure you've had that experience where you've gone in and suddenly gotten 20 gallons of gas on it from a tank, from a dispenser, when you know your capacity is 17.8 gallons in your Toyota, you've been cheated because people have messed with the metering system. And that is something we don't want to have happen with the electric vehicles and people charging for more electricity than you actually have consumed. And this is a simple, time-tested way of prohibiting or not reducing the likelihood that there will be people who will come into this business and cheat.
Okay.
And I'm an old man, and I know there are people who will try
I
and
drive a
cheat.
Ford, by the way, but.
Any other questions?
I have some questions.
Thanks for your time.
I had some questions for you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, so you seem to be a knowledgeable man on this, this bill. So will these charging stations be collecting user data?
In the aggregate, and depending on the vehicle and the contractual situation you have. For example, if you drive a Tesla, there are certain plans that Tesla, when you plug in, all your fuel is free, and Tesla knows how much fuel you've gotten. If you buy from a company like Shell, or EVgo, or Shell Recharge, as it's called now, or ChargePoint, they're going to know how much fuel you have purchased and who to bill it to, because it's done through your credit card, just like it is when you buy Shell gasoline. So it's no different, really, in the ultimately than buying a gasoline with a credit card or other means of payment.
Okay. So do you see the state agency here, TDLR, having access to that data?
I don't think it's in the bill. I don't think they have access to that data except for the transaction about which that complaint is filed. So it's not aggregate data. It is just the data around which a complaint might be filed.
But if you were concerned about the state of Texas beginning to track data on people's electric vehicle usage, this would be a way to do it, right?
It's the same kind of thing as you get every year when you go in and get your gasoline car inspected. They know how many miles you've driven. You know, last year I drove my SUV 10,000 miles and my electric vehicle somewhere in the neighborhood of about 14. And they know that. The state knows that.
Mr. Schaefer, we have TDLR here as a resource. If you'd like to ask them.
That's all right. I'm good.
I don't mind. I'll pull them up. That's what they're here for.
I think I'm satisfied. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you all very much for your time.
Okay. Seeing none. Okay. Chair calls Sid Miller, Commissioner of Agriculture, Mr. Miller, for the record, please state your name and who you represent, your position on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, good to be with you today. I'm Commissioner Sid Miller of the Texas Department of Agriculture, testifying as the Commissioner of Agriculture.
So in that capacity, Mr. Miller, as you're well aware, you're registered against the bill, and as the Commissioner of Agriculture, you can only register as neutral and come in as a resource witness. Now, if you want to be registered that way, we can change you to neutral and call you up for resource, or we can change you to Sid Miller and you can testify against it. Well, that has no bearing in this hearing. So how would you like to do this?
I'll tell you what, you're going to hear the same thing either way. If you'd rather.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to hear the testimony as you, as Commissioner of Agriculture, registered against the bill.
No,
that is not proper.
I don't think you heard me. I said, you're going to hear the same thing if I testify as a commissioner or if I testify as Sid Miller. So.
You're not going to testify as a commissioner against the bill is what I'm telling you.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. If you'd rather me not do that, I won't do that. I'll testify as myself.
That's what I'm asking you, if I have your permission to change.
That's right.
Sid
Okay.
Miller
Sure.
Against the bill. Yeah. So give us 1 second so we can get this straight. We also need an address. It's not the agency address.
I'll get that to you.
We have to do it before we start.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, my understanding is that the witness, whoever that might be, has to fill out the witness affirmation form electronically, or do we, the clerk, has the ability to change this electronically ourselves? I just want to make sure we have a good record for your bill.
That's a good question.
So
but
I'm just trying to make sure that we follow all the House rules and procedures.
At this time, we're going to offer that accommodation to Mr. Miller and change his testimony so we can get started.
Okay.
Or change his registration, rather, not his testimony.
Okay, so we're changing his registration
to Sid Miller.
Sid Miller.
Self.
Okay. And
his home, I guess it's a home address now, and taking the Commissioner of Agriculture off of the registration so he can maintain his against position.
Okay. And I guess if you recognize, I just want to clarify something with Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Okay. So you're aware that you know how this works, Mr. Miller. So I just want to clarify that you're testifying here today as yourself and
That's
not as
correct.
somebody.
Yes, sir. You bet. Absolutely.
And I think I just want to make sure that you're aware too, that you've testified on, you've been around here a long time and you know how this works. And so the challenge we're having is we know who you are. Right? Yeah. We're trying to keep a clean record, but you know what you're doing in testifying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No doubt. I'm well within my rights. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Are we clear?
Yes.
Mr. Miller, for the record, let's just start over so we're clean. For the record, please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
I'm Sid Miller testifying as myself, and I am against the bill.
Thank you. Please proceed.
All right. Mr. Chairman, this is actually a pretty good bill. I don't have much problem with it. Only one little change needs to be made. I think it's at the wrong agency. Texas Department of Agriculture has been the weights and measures agency for over 100 years. We were developed basically to oversee weights and measures, one of our main reasons, not the only reason, but cotton was sold by, 500-pound bales, livestock sold by weight, commodities sold by the bushel, firewood sold by the rick or cord. So the legislature created us to oversee weights and measures. We've been doing that for quite some time.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Please talk about the bill and not the agency that you're not representing at this moment.
I can do that.
Every time you say we and us and the agency, you're getting away from why you personally are against the bill. You're not in your official capacity at this time. Please adhere to that. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this bill doesn't really have anything, or this new program, it's not a new program. It's a new device to the Department of Agriculture. So they would just simply add it to the list of things that they do there. These devices are not going to be at the gas stations for the most part. There may be a few, but they're mainly going to be where vehicles can be for several hours. Hotels, entertainment venues like theaters or amusement parks, airports. They'll be in parking lots at shopping centers, strip malls, schools, universities, airports. The biggest purveyor of these devices is going to be TxDOT. They're drawing down about $70 million to put in charging stations from the federal government on our interstates, mostly on I-35 up and down the corridor and I-10. So it doesn't really correlate to gas pumps in anything like that. I've got a statement here, if you want to look in your packet. It's from Gina Parker. She was a chairman of TDLR, was on that board for 9 years. I won't read the whole thing to you because I know y'all are tired and ready to go. But she states that TDLR is primarily an occupational licensing agency, not a statewide inspection service. You read on down a little bit, she says it's TDLR is woefully behind in responsibilities on regulation and inspection of fuel pumps. And I've got some information I'll share with you on that. Now, rather than working with TDLR to fix current problems, this adds an extra burden on the agency and is setting the agency up for failure. And I don't think y'all want to do that. Let me just say, there's some good people over at TDLR, and there's some programs they run over that are really good. The fuel pumps has been a disaster. So it'd be unfair to the agency to give them this, and according to the former chair, it should remain with the Texas Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your testimony. Members, questions? Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. You mentioned something that I want to talk about just a little bit. You mentioned TxDOT's involvement in building electric vehicle charging stations with federal money that the Biden administration has pushed out. When at the advent of the gasoline engine in cars, the state of Texas did not engage in constructing and operating fuel stations in the state of Texas. Right. Yet here we are at the advent of electrical vehicles, and the state of Texas is going to get involved as an agency building and operating electric vehicle charging stations with a data collection mandate from the federal government. I've got a bill. It's, I'm pushing an initiative.
Not talk about it.
I'm not talking about it, but there are people in this building who think that the state of Texas should not be involved in the private sector's job of building out these electric vehicle charging stations. Tesla can do it. Buc-ee's can do it. You already go to Buc-ee's on I-35. They're already doing business with these companies. Do you have any opinion as to whether TxDOT should be engaging in the construction of electric vehicle charging stations?
Personally, I think it should be left to the private sector, but they are drawing down federal money, grant money, that they don't have to pay back to put in these charging stations. Of course, I think we all know the Biden administration is pushing the electric vehicles and would like to, replace the combustion engine with the electric vehicles. So they're doing everything they possibly can to make the transition, including giving grant money to states to put in charging stations.
Yeah, I just have some concern about, as we're looking at how we're going to regulate these charging stations, you're literally getting and I had the executive director talking about this in a hearing, and I asked him, I said, does this agency really want to get in the business of managing?
Right.
You build roads and things like that.
We're talking about a different agency than what this bill deals with. So
no, this is very important, Mr. Chairman,
but
because
what I'm asking you to do is, if you've got more questions for Mr. Miller, ask them, because I'm going to call TDLR up here, who's going to be charged with regulating this under my bill, and then I want you to ask away.
You bet, Mr. I think the only point I was trying to make was that we're trying to determine which agency is going to do something. Mm-hmm. You have another state agency that's out there actually going to be getting in the same business I don't know where we're headed.
I'm not sure either. Members, more questions for Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller, thank you for being here. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd still like to have that meeting with you. Haven't been able to get that. I'd rather talk to you behind closed doors and air this out here in front of the committee. I had a lot more information that I didn't get to. I didn't know I was on a time limit. I
Though
wish
we've
I'd have
had
known that.
the time is consistent with everybody that's testified before this committee. So we are going to move on. Chair would call TDLR. Yeah. Chair calls Jessica Escobar.
Hi, Chairman, members, Jessica Escobar, Vice Chair, Chief of Staff, TDLR, and I am here as a resource on the bill.
I appreciate you being here, Jessica.
Yes, sir.
I am kind of along the same lines as Mr. Schaefer. I'd kind of like to maybe drill down a little bit on how this regulation would work.
Okay.
And we just heard testimony that TDLR is woefully unprepared to take this on. Since I'm asking you to take it on under House Bill 3343, I would appreciate an answer to that.
Absolutely. Of course, as I've mentioned before, we're at the will of the legislature and we're ready to put any program into place that's given to us. We transferred the motor fuel program to us after it was passed in 2019. So we went through that program transition, and I came from TDA at that time and worked on that program transition. So this would be somewhat analogous to that. We have already started analyzing the program. We've started looking at the regulations, which are similar to the motor fuel program. And we've started looking at pricing and regulation for registration fees. So we've got staff. We also regulate electricians. These devices are electrical devices. They need to be and are installed by licensed electricians. So we have those on, we would make that a part of our regulation. That would be something that would be incorporated into these components. So we are ready. One of the parts of your bill also includes a stakeholder work group. So for us at TDLR, one of our big models is incorporating our industry stakeholders. So before we pass any rules, we want to make sure that they represent the industry that we are regulating. And so we want to make sure that we capture their subject matter expertise and their knowledge to pass the rules. We want to know that they reflect their knowledge and that they will help their businesses. We're not there to impede business. So before any rules would be passed on this program, we would work very closely with them on those rules. Excuse me.
Okay, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you. Are you familiar with kind of the electric vehicle charging station plan over at TxDOT?
I am, excuse me, yes.
Okay. You realize there's a data collection component to that requirement?
I am somewhat, excuse me, we are not affiliated with that. We have worked with them. Theirs is more to capture a network and tracking where those electric chargers are so that when you hop onto a map, you know where you can find a charger. The way that the bill, you had asked that question, Representative, would be collection of data and related to complaints. For our purposes, we do not plan to capture any data at TDLR. For complaint purposes, say you were to file a complaint with us, would we capture anything? The answer would be only to the extent that you filed a complaint and you said, my complaint was for the electric vehicle charging unit in front of Congress and 10th Street. That would be to the extent of information we would capture. And for example, in this particular bill, it would just be where is the charging unit located. We're not going to get deeper into GPS coordinates. We're not going to look into data on who has used it, credit card information. The only thing we would ask for if you filed a complaint was, where were you?
Okay.
And what was the complaint related to?
I see that. I take you at your word that that would be the intent of the agency under this bill.
Right.
However, when I read the electric vehicle plan for TxDOT, it comes with the data collection requirement. So TxDOT's going to have to follow the data collection requirements from the federal government as they manage these stations. And if you take over with the sister agency, You see where I'm going?
I do, Representative. So the TxDOT portion, I think, is primarily related to the funding from the federal government. And so it's pass-through funding to those recipients.
But they have to follow, but if you read their plan, they're basically going to be partners.
Right.
TxDOT's going to be in a partnership on all these. So now we have this hybrid, we don't know what it is. We're not in the government trying to do the private sector, not as well as the private sector can do it. And at the same time, having this data collection, I'm concerned from a privacy perspective and from a perspective of why are we getting in the business of building electric vehicle charging stations? And I just know members, we're trying to make a decision here as a state as how we're going to handle this new technology, this new innovation, which is good. But one, we have privacy issues, and one, we have a role of government issue. And I think we need to talk to maybe some of our other colleagues about, like, where are we headed with this? Because TxDOT is heavily involved in this already. That would be my only point I'd want to make for the members.
Right, and I just want to point out, again, what TxDOT is doing, their partnership isn't what this bill addresses. This bill addresses private industry that's going to go put a charging station next to a gas pump at the 7-Eleven, and we have to make sure the consumer has protection and gets what they paid for.
I understand that, Mr. Chair, but TxDOT's being...
Right, but that's the TxDOT bill. That's not what TDLR is trying to, will be regulated.
What you just said about building out those stations, that's what TxDOT's going to do as well.
Exactly, but that's not what we are doing. TxDOT is a state agency doing this. This TDLR would be regulating private companies that are putting these in. So it's two separate issues. I get what you're saying, but you keep talking about what TxDOT's doing, and that's not what this bill addresses. And I just want to be clear, we're still talking about House Bill 3343, and I agree, we'll continue to talk with our colleagues and see how the two parallel, but for today's purposes, just for the record, let's be real clear. This is about House Bill 3343 and the role of TDLR should this bill become law.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have a question for?
Yes, sir. Just a point of clarification. You mentioned earlier you would, obviously, your state agency, you will do what, obviously from a public policy standpoint, what, in essence, the legislature provides to you to implement or not implement, to regulate, not regulate. But you have TDLR, and this goes to a bigger theme. You've been tasked to do a lot more the last couple of sessions, or last couple of years, is that correct?
That is correct, Vice Chair.
But we provide you resources, because I'm thinking now, putting my other hat on, we've provided you some resources to implement some of those responsibilities, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. One of those was at gas pumps, the card skimmer.
The Financial Crimes Intelligence Center.
Yeah, financial crimes, and we've put dollars into that as well.
Absolutely, and we appreciate what the legislature appropriated for that, and that was $2.6 million. And as of the end of February, they have intercepted losses nearly $100 million, and that is under our purview in the last year and a half through our work with motor fuels. So it's an incredible success. Yes.
Right, and so what you're doing with that and how it relates to this is that to this bill is it's a consumer protection component
Absolutely.
of it, because you're intercepting or you're trying to prevent the consumer from getting robbed at the pump by somebody stealing their identity or stealing their card, or somebody using a fake card or credit card, I'm sorry.
That's correct. And it can be through your credit card. It can be through different variations of those paying networks. And we work closely with our RFCIC director and staff in Tyler, where they're based, and they identify new threats every day. And so this is one, as we see things that may develop, they can help us to work with our industry stakeholders. Through our FCIC and the motor fuel program, we have developed outstanding relationships with the fuel and financial industry sectors. And so those have helped us to bridge the gap and ensure we can help protect consumers closer.
So that type of experience in consumer protection, do you believe, do you believe it would be helpful, instructive in what this bill is seeking to do?
I believe we have the capacity and the ability to handle that, yes, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Representative Harless.
Thank you, Chairman. And Vice Chairman Wally kind of addressed the point I wanted to make is I think we've addressed this in the past as far as data collection. Every time we go with a motor vehicle, gasoline-powered motor vehicle, we stick our card in the pump, there's data collection right there. So this, I don't think, would be any different. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Mr. Harless. Members, further questions? Anybody else for TDLR? Okay, well, if there's no further questions, Jessica, okay, we have a Okay, we're gonna call Jason Ferniho, Deputy Commissioner of Texas Agricultural Department, registered as neutral on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, we're Jason Fernio, Deputy Commissioner, Texas Department of Ag. We have staff here ready as resource witnesses. That was my intent on the registration.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Anybody for the Deputy Commissioner, anybody got anything else you want to ask? No. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. All right. Is that it? Is there, all right, is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3343? Hearing none, at this time, if there's no objection, House Bill 3343 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 3343 is left pending. Okay. Members, that concludes today's agenda. Is there any further business to discuss before the committee? If not, Chair moves that the committee stand adjourned. Is there objection? Hearing none, the committee stands adjourned, subject call of the chair.